Chapter 601. The ghost messengers and ghost generals changed their formation, layer upon layer, advancing and retreating at the same time. An intense yin qi soared into the sky as all of the ghost messengers and ghost generals released their spears and shot towards the sky. They were so densely packed that it was as if they were covering the sky above Tang Zheng's head. Tang Zheng held his sword with both hands, and with a move of heaven and earth, rumbling, sword light burst out. In an instant, half of the sky was filled with spear shadows. Boom, boom, boom. In the air, sword light and spear shadows intersected, and explosions sounded out one after another. Tang Zheng's arm trembled uncontrollably, and many ghost messengers and ghost generals fell to the ground dead, turning into wisps of yin qi. However, reinforcements continued to arrive from all directions, and the number of spear shadows in the sky suddenly increased. The air fluctuated violently, and the spear shadows became illusory. With a flash of light, thousands of spear shadows merged into one, turning into a long spear, standing in the air. Su. The long spear turned into an aurora, breaking through the air, and fiercely piercing towards Tang Zheng. Return to origin, Tang Zheng shouted. The true qi in his body surged, and poured into the war spirit sword. The war spirit sword's light immediately converged, and no longer had the berserk aura from before. Instead, it turned into an ordinary long sword, and without any fancy moves, it swung out. The sword and spear attacked together, and everything returned to calm. The spear shadows dissipated, and the square was once again slanted, and a large number of people fell down. Tang Zheng staggered back, his face pale, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. To resist the power of so many enemies by himself, this was already his limit. His true qi was trembling, as if it wanted to break out of his body, and it was really uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth and endured it. His feet slipped, and he rushed towards the high platform. The enemies were swaying left and right, and were seriously injured. They simply could not stop him in time, and could only watch as Tang Zheng inserted the token into the high platform. Shua. The light in the square rose again, and shot straight into the sky. Tang Zheng stood in the middle of the light, his figure slowly becoming blurry. In the sky, the black clouds changed, forming a vortex, and all the light was sucked into it. Tang Zheng felt himself becoming lighter. He flew up bit by bit and was sucked into the black clouds, disappearing without a trace. In front of him was an endless darkness. He couldn't see anything. Tang Zheng could only feel his own breathing. He didn't know where he was at all. Bang! Tang Zheng's feet finally landed on the ground. His body paused for a moment as his feet touched the ground. The darkness was dispelled and the light shone. Figures overlapped and Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he vigilantly stared ahead. This was another huge plaza. Ghost generals and ghost generals stood around the plaza like javelins, glaring at each other like tigers eyeing their prey. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and leave. The messenger nudged Tang Zheng and urged. He must have been scared silly by the appearance of Fengdu City. Every time we see this kind of country bumpkin, another ghost servant sneered. Ha, Fengdu City is the center of the ghost world. Of course, it's not comparable to other remote villages. When they go back, they will definitely be able to brag to the other ghost citizens for a while. Tang Zheng's tense muscles finally relaxed. If he hadn't heard the words Fengdu City, he would have resisted violently. I've finally arrived at Fengdu City. So damn fast. Tang Zheng could only use this sentence to express the shock in his heart. I must find out what's going on with this teleportation array in the future. With this array, the distance to other places won't be a problem at all. Tang Zheng maintained the appearance of an ordinary ghost citizen. He timidly left the plaza and walked into a stone path. Behind him was a swaggering ghost servant. Seeing him looking around, he kicked his leg and scolded, "What are you looking at? Be careful or I'll gouge your eyeballs out. Is Yama Palace a place where you can look as you wish?" Yama Palace. Tang Zheng's heart violently thumped a few times. He remembered that Fengdu City was the territory of King Yama. This Yama Palace was probably King Yama's palace. This was the center of power in Fengdu City, a true dragon's pool and tiger's den. Since the other party brought Yi Xuanzhi's soul to Fengdu City, It's most likely to be brought to Yama Palace. Yama Palace is heavily guarded. If I go out, it won't be easy to come in again. Why don't I take advantage of this opportunity to search around? Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He thought that this method was reliable. Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't restrain himself and instead looked around even more unscrupulously, the ghost servant was furious. He scolded, "Country bumpkin, you don't know the rules from a small place. Today, I will teach you the rules of Fengdu City." After that, the whip in his hand fiercely lashed at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng suddenly turned around and raised his hand to grab the whip. With a forceful pull, the ghost servant was dragged in front of him. Their eyes met and they were very close. The ghost servant was shocked. He looked at this lowly ghost citizen in horror. Soon after, he came back to his senses and flew into a rage. "You are courting death." The ghost servant attacked again, but Tang Zheng grabbed his fist and twisted it. The ghost servant's arm turned into a fried dough twist. The pain made him grimace. "You! Who are you?" The ghost servant was not stupid. The difference between ghost citizens and ghost servants was like a chasm. How could he resist him? This was definitely not a ghost citizen. Tang Zheng grabbed the ghost servant's neck and stopped him from shouting. He stared at him fiercely and said, "If you dare to shout, I will make your soul scatter. Obediently answer my question." The ghost servant rolled his eyes, but other than pain, his eyes were full of anger. "Mph, if you don't want to cooperate, then there is no need for you to keep your other arm." In an instant, both of the ghost servant's arms were twisted into a fried dough twist. The ghost servant was in so much pain that he looked like a ferocious ghost. "Now you know how to cooperate." The ghost servant hurriedly nodded. "Do you know where the ghost in Reincarnation City went?" The ghost servant was at a loss. Seeing the ferocious look in Tang Zheng's eyes, he hurriedly moved his throat and wanted to speak. "Don't shout, or I will kill you immediately." The ghost servant nodded. Tang Zheng released his grip. The ghost servant took a deep breath and said hurriedly, "Although I do not know about ghosts, I saw the Kakravati king bring his elites to Fengdu City. Then, they were taken away by King Yenluo's bodyguards. The Kakravati king was here too. No wonder the Kakravati city was weak, which gave Tang Zheng the opportunity to take advantage of it. Tang Zheng did not think that he could go against the 10 kings of hell alone. The Kakravati king must be a very powerful existence. But now that the Kakravati king was here, he would have to face 2 kings of hell. Tang Zheng was even more inferior. But even if he knew that there were tigers in the mountains, he still had to go there. "Where will the Kakravati king be taken to?" Tang Zheng asked again. "Where is the meeting hall?" "West. Can you let me go now? I will not make the same mistake twice. I will not trust the people of the ghost world again." Tang Zheng said coldly. Crack. With a twist of his neck, the ghost servant died and turned into yin energy, disappearing without a trace. Tang Zheng rushed towards the direction of the assembly hall, disappearing into the orderly and majestic group of palaces. Along the way, he avoided a few pairs of patrolling ghost servants and arrived at the center of Yama Hall. There were obviously more guards. Not only were there patrolling teams in the open, Tang Zheng also found a few spies in the dark. Therefore, he had no choice but to slow down and be careful to avoid being discovered. Not far away, a building with a different style stood in front of him. It was very eye-catching, and Tang Zheng's attention was immediately attracted. Moreover, the security outside this building was much tighter than other places. There were 2 ghost marshals guarding the door. Could this be the meeting hall? Tang Zheng approached step by step, but did not sneak in from the main entrance. Instead, he circled to a blind spot on the side of the building, and with a leap, he climbed onto the eaves and crouched on the roof, listening attentively. "Kakravati king, is what you said true? Is there really a sudden increase in lifespan in your jurisdiction?" A dignified voice asked. A high-pitched voice replied, "Of course, this is after a careful examination. The evidence is this ghost in front of us. He was originally at the end of his lifespan, but suddenly, he inexplicably gained 10 more years of lifespan. And the investigator I sent to investigate disappeared for no reason. This time, I've deliberately captured a part of this person's soul and brought it back to the ghost realm. I'm determined to get to the bottom of this. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. It sounded like a conversation between Yama King and Kakravati King, and they had just discussed it. However, he did not know if Yi Xuanji had spoken yet. Let him speak. Who is the mastermind behind this? Yama King pondered for a moment and said, if we find out who it is, we must kill this person. This person is the natural enemy of the ghost realm, we must not let him live. Of course. Yi Xuanji, let me ask you, who gave you 10 years of lifespan? Kakravati King asked fiercely. Who are you, and why did you capture me here? What is the ghost realm? Yi Xuanji asked angrily. How dare you shout in the ghost realm? Do you believe that I will destroy your soul and make you unable to reincarnate? Kakravati King was furious. Yi Xuanji was not an ordinary person. He did not die a natural death, but his soul was forcefully captured. His soul was still very conscious. Although his throat had been sealed the entire time and he was unable to speak, he was truly terrified by such a technique. Even so, he was not completely scared out of his wits. Hearing Kakravati King's threat, he glared at them and said, I don't care what ghost realm you are in. If you don't let me go, I will kill you. The head of the Ye family was indeed domineering. He dared to talk back to 2 Yama kings. Kakravati King said coldly, since you can't accept reality, I will wake you up. Suddenly, ooh-ah! An ear-piercing scream rang out. What are you doing to me? It hurts, stop. This was not an ordinary physical pain. It was a pain and trembling that came from the depths of his soul. His soul could not resist at all. This was why no matter how powerful a person was, they would still have to submit to the King of Hell after they died. They could not even muster the slightest thought of resisting. This was because souls could not fight against the King of Hell. The King of Hell was the natural enemy of souls. They had an unmatched advantage and strength. I said, I will tell you anything. Chapter 602. Hearing Yi Xuanji's words, Tang Zheng knew that things were not going well. The head of the Ye family did not seem to be as tough as he thought. There was no way to hide anymore. Boom! With a fierce stomp of his feet, a large hole appeared in the roof, and the tiles fell down like raindrops. Tang Zheng flew down, and while he was still in the air, the war soul sword flashed, and it had already slashed towards the people in the meeting room with an indomitable will. Who is it? Shouts burst out. One by one, figures rose from the ground. The magic weapon in their hands shone brightly as they welcomed the war soul sword. Tang Zheng took the initiative. The heaven-flying immortal sword technique was continuously used. Its power was peerless, and it collided with the magic weapon of the others. Then, he took the opportunity and rushed towards Yi Xuanji without hesitation. Yi Xuanji still had a look of fear and pain between his brows, but in the next moment, he looked at this uninvited guest with his mouth agape. Especially that gorgeous and domineering sword technique, it caused his mind to be greatly shaken. There was a sense of familiarity that he could not figure out for a while. He did not recognize Tang Zheng. Because, ever since he came to the ghost realm, Tang Zheng had already used an illusion to change his appearance. Seeing that this uninvited guest was actually running towards him, Yi Xuanji's eyes widened even more. His face revealed a terrified expression. He did not think that he could escape from the opponent's sword. He wanted to escape very much, but his body was already imprisoned. He could not move. He could only watch the opponent approach like a puppet. He was so frightened that he turned pale. He kept screaming, without the slightest aura of the head of the family. Heh! Suddenly, he was stunned. The long sword did not fall on his body. Instead, this uninvited guest grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back, rushing towards the door. This person is here to save me. Yi Xuanji's mind was confused. There was someone in this damned place who cared about him and even risked his life to save him. Who is this person? That's right, why did the sword technique just now have a sense of familiarity, as if he had seen it somewhere before? He did not have enough time to think about this question. Because, an angry roar exploded his eardrums, like rolling thunder. Stop him. King Yang Luo flew into a rage. No matter who the other party was, they dared to barge into his meeting room and snatch people from his hands under the watchful eyes of everyone. This was completely challenging his dignity and bottom line. If he allowed the other party to succeed, then his prestige in the world of spirits and souls would be greatly reduced in the future, and he might even become a private laughingstock. The King of Hell was recognized as the head of the 10 kings of Hell in the ghost realm. The other kings of Hell had long coveted this position. If he couldn't stop the other party this time, then even his position would be in danger. Under the command of King Yang Luo, the sound of breaking through the air rang out. One after another, ghostly figures chased after Tang Zheng. All sorts of magical treasures illuminated the meeting hall, making it dazzling. A strong wind blew behind him. Tang Zheng's face darkened. He pointed behind him, and the dragon-trapping rope appeared out of nowhere. It danced in the air like a spirit snake. Boom! Boom! The dragon-trapping lasso blocked most of the attacks, and a few of the enemies were even whipped by the lasso, exploding and dying. However, there were too many attackers, and there were still a few that slipped through the net and hit Tang Zheng's back. Puff! Blood spurted out, and pain flashed across Tang Zheng's face. However, he gritted his teeth and endured it. Instead, he took advantage of the momentum and escaped to the door with Yixuanji. As a guest, the Kakravati king couldn't just stand by and watch. Because he was the one who brought Yixuanji here, and he couldn't stay out of it. His eyes were like torches, and they were as round as copper bells. He shouted angrily, trying to escape. "Leave your life here." Whoosh! He slapped his palm in the air, and a square seal shot out from his palm. Like a mountain, it fell down on Tang Zheng and Yixuanji from above. The word king was written on the square seal, and it emitted a mysterious and powerful force. Tang Zheng's breathing suddenly stopped, as if he was about to suffocate. He took a deep breath to regain his strength. He didn't even need to raise his head to know that there was a powerful magical treasure coming at him. Hence, he roared and had no choice but to stop. Yixuanji staggered and almost fell down. Tang Zheng turned around abruptly, and with a flip of his hand, he was already holding the heaven-shaking bow and sun-shooting arrow. A powerful aura was immediately emitted from the bow and arrow. He pulled the bow and arrow, and there was nothing fancy about it. With a piercing sound, the sun-shooting arrow pierced through the air, and directly hit the square seal above his head. Boom! With a loud sound, the square seal fell from mid-air. The sun-shooting arrow flashed, and lost its power. It was nailed to the beam, and only the tail of the arrow was left, trembling non-stop. Seeing this, the people of the ghost realm were shocked, and looked at the heaven-shaking bow and sun-shooting arrow in disbelief. One must know that the power of the Kakravati king's attack was not to be underestimated, especially that square seal, which was one of the most important magical treasures of the ghost realm's kings. Yama's seal. That was the name of the square seal, the token of the 10 kings of Hell. Not only was it a symbol of power, it was also a powerful magical treasure. However, due to the strength of each king of Hell and the size of his territory, the level of the Yama's seal was different. The Yama's seal would change according to the strength of each king of Hell. This was because the Yama's seal operated in the same way as the ghost realm. The stronger the ghost realm was, the stronger the Yama's seal would be. Over the years, the ghost realm had developed, and the power of each king of Hell's seal had undergone a qualitative leap. Of course, as the current king of Hell was the most powerful king of Hell, his Yama's seal was the most powerful. However, the Kakravati king's Yama's seal was not to be underestimated. He used such a powerful magical treasure in his first attack, and it showed that he did not underestimate his opponent. Instead, he was determined to stop Tang Zheng, and even kill Tang Zheng. However, the result shocked everyone. The Yama's seal was on par with the arrow. Moreover, the Kakravati king could clearly feel the damage to the Yama's seal when the arrow collided with the seal. If he were to clash with the arrow a few more times, his Yama's seal would definitely be damaged, and that would be a huge problem for him. Although the others did not feel it as clearly as the Kakravati king, they were all dumbfounded and speechless. Tang Zheng did not care about losing the shooting sun arrows as he shouted, "Go!" and rushed out of the meeting hall with Yixuanji. Yixuanji stared at the bow in Tang Zheng's hand, his expression fluctuating as he suddenly came to a realization. Stuttering, he said in disbelief, "It's you. It's actually you." Seeing the shooting sun arrows and the sky-shattering bow, Yi Xuanji was sure of Tang Zheng's identity, but he still could not believe that it was him who came to save him. In the past, he had tried many times to cut ties with Tang Zheng, but he did not expect that he would be the one to stand up for him in this moment of crisis. But in an instant, he realized another problem. He already understood that he was just a strand of soul. His usual superb martial arts had no substantial effect and could not be used at all. Right now, he did not even have the strength to truss a chicken and was at the mercy of others. He did not like this deep sense of danger. However, looking at Tang Zheng, he could not understand why Tang Zheng was still so powerful. Furthermore, he was several times more powerful than when they first met. This was simply illogical. Before Yi Xuanji could lament for too long, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he knew that his identity had been exposed. He stared at him and said in an unfriendly tone, "If you want to live, don't talk nonsense." Yi Xuanji's neck shrunk as he understood that these people were here for the life-continuing pill. The life-continuing pill came from Tang Zheng's hands, which meant that it was inextricably linked to him. In an instant, Yi Xuanji finally understood the cause and effect. Hearing Tang Zheng's unfriendly warning, although he was a little angry, he tactfully shut his mouth. Only his eyes were left as he stared at this mysterious scene. "You guys are indeed together. Could it be that you are the one behind this? To think that you have the ability to trespass into the ghost realm. This is a good opportunity to take you down and find out what happened." King Yang Luo spoke again as his expression became unprecedentedly serious. Obviously, the confrontation between the shooting sun arrows and King Yanluo's seal had shaken King Yang Luo. He did not dare to slight Tang Zheng and understood that this would not be a small battle. However, this was his home ground after all, and he had absolute confidence in taking down his opponent. Tang Zheng did not care about the other party's question. He knew that there was a big gap between his strength and King Yanluo's. If he continued to fight, only death would await him. He immediately warned Yi Xuanji in a low voice, "You must stay by my side, this will be a fierce battle. If you are too far away from me, then I won't be able to protect you, and you will never be able to return to the human realm to see your family again." Yi Xuanji nodded, "Don't worry, I will try my best not to cause trouble for you." After all, he was the head of the family and a smart person. He knew what was more important and what was more important. The Kakravati king's face flushed red. His attack did not succeed, and he wanted to make up for it and regain his face. However, King Yang Luo did not give him the chance. Since the Kakravati king had failed, if King Yang Luo defeated Tang Zheng, he would be able to suppress the Kakravati king. As the kings of hell who had always been fighting in the open and in the dark, King Yang Luo was very willing to harm others to benefit himself. His figure flashed and instantly closed the distance between him and Tang Zheng. His palm flashed as the terrifying power of King Yanluo's seal was immediately released. In the ghost realm, King Yanluo's seal is everything. Unlike the Kakravati king, King Yang Luo did not fight head-on. Instead, he used another function of King Yanluo's seal, soul absorption. King Yanluo's seal could absorb any soul in the ghost realm as long as the user was strong enough. Even the 10 kings of hell were no exception. When these souls were absorbed by King Yanluo's seal, they would be directly transported to the 18th level of hell and suffer incomparable pain. King Yang Luo was very confident. He wanted to let his opponent have a taste of the 18th level of hell and let him understand the power of the ghost realm. Tang Zheng did not know this. Seeing that his opponent had activated King Yanluo's seal again, he did not hesitate to draw his bow and arrow, preparing to use the same trick again. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit him. He felt that his soul was about to leave his body. The King Yanluo's seal was like a black hole, attracting his soul. Chapter 603. His soul was about to leave his body. This feeling was too mysterious. Tang Zheng couldn't help but cry out. Yama Wang sneered and said disdainfully, "Struggling? Is there any use?" Tang Zheng didn't comment and hurriedly circulated his true qi. However, he found that everything was in vain. His true qi leaked out without any resistance. Yi Xuanji's situation was even worse. He was originally a wisp of soul, so he directly floated toward Yama's seal. Stop! Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and roared, grabbing Yi Xuanji. But in an instant, he felt that his soul was attracted by an even greater force. It was really about to float away. Yama Wang was full of confidence. He continued to circulate his energy. The suction force of Yama's seal suddenly increased, and Tang Zheng's soul directly left his body. No, I have to think of a way. Suddenly, Tang Zheng had an idea. Now, the only thing he could rely on was the four symbols venerables. Come out. Boom. The four symbols venerables stomped on the ground fiercely. Its huge body directly pierced through the roof of the meeting hall. Ah! Cries of alarm sounded. Everyone was frightened by this huge thing. What is this thing? The four symbols venerables grabbed Tang Zheng's soul and merged it with his body. Tang Zheng finally regained his mobility. The tip of his foot touched the four symbols venerable's knee and rushed into the secret room in his chest. This was the first time Yi Xuanji entered the four symbols venerable's body. He couldn't help but be speechless. He knew that the Chu clan's patriarch was unlucky in the hands of this big guy, so he was especially afraid. But when he was in the body, he couldn't help but look around like a curious baby. This is equivalent to the big guy's control room. But there's no equipment. How can it be controlled? Yi Xuanji was disappointed. He was confused, and his frown deepened. What is this thing? Yama Wang and Kakravati Wang also couldn't help but widen their eyes. Especially Yama Wang, the shock in his heart was even more intense. Because the Yama's seal in his hand had lost its effect. It could no longer absorb the other party's soul. The Yama's seal's powerful advantage had actually lost its effect. This was something that Yama Wang had never encountered before. What's going on? The Yama King's eyes darkened as he stared at the four symbols venerables. He snorted coldly and said, "No matter what you are, you can forget about escaping from my grasp in the ghost realm." With a flash of light, the Yama's seal suddenly enlarged and turned into a towering mountain. It directly broke through the roof and pressed down on the head of the four symbols venerable, determined to suppress it. Tang Zheng's HP was fully restored. With a thought, the four symbols venerable punched toward the sky. Boom! Like a sudden clap of thunder, the ground was filled with debris. The feet of the four symbols venerable sank into the ground, and the flying debris hit a few people from the ghost realm, killing them one after another. The Yama seal descended bit by bit, as if it was going to crush the four divine beasts. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. He had originally thought that the four symbols venerables would be enough to deal with the other party, but it seemed that he had still underestimated King Yanluo's strength. The Yama's seal truly had the power of 1,000 catties. It was like Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Not only were the bodies of the four divine beasts creaking as if they were about to fall apart, even Tang Zheng felt as if his own bones were about to shatter. Ah! The heart-wrenching pain caused Tang Zheng to involuntarily scream. His cheeks flushed red, and a terrifying cold light erupted from his eyes. He roared, "Another one!" Boom boom! With two loud sounds, two giant feet appeared out of thin air. They raised their hands and pushed, supporting the Yama's seal together with the four symbols venerable from before. Go! The two four symbols venerable worked together, gushing out with force. Swoosh! The Yama's seal was sent flying. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the four symbols venerable took a step forward and rushed out with the speed of a thunderclap. They shuttled through the scattered halls and rushed straight out of the city. Boom 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 boom! The 4 feet landed on the ground. The various halls of King Yanluo's hall were destroyed, turning into ruins under the feet of the 4 symbols venerable. The people from the ghost realm in the halls screamed as they fled. Many of them were directly crushed under the feet of the 4 symbols venerable. When the Yama king saw this, he gritted his teeth in hatred. This was his headquarters, his blood, sweat, and tears. He could only watch helplessly as the halls collapsed one after another. His heart was dripping blood. "I'm going to tear you into pieces and beat you to the 18th level of hell." King Yangluo roared hysterically. With a tap of his foot, a black cloud emerged from under his feet. A sinister wind blew, and he actually flew into the sky. "Let me help you," the Kakravati king roared. Wind blew under his feet as he stepped on a black cloud and soared into the sky, chasing after Tang Zheng. The other people from the ghost realm chased after him as fast as lightning. All kinds of magic treasures were thrown at the four symbols venerable. However, the four symbols venerable was invulnerable. These ordinary magic treasures could do nothing to it. They could only tickle it. King Yangluo and the Chakravarti king also realized the extraordinariness of the four symbols venerable. In their impression, they had never heard of such a colossus. They couldn't help but feel suspicious. Weren't cultivators on the decline in the mortal realm, and there weren't many left? How could there be such a heaven-defying existence? In fact, they could already tell that Tang Zheng's actual cultivation wasn't very high. It would be a piece of cake for them to deal with him. However, the magic treasures in his hands were extraordinary, especially the bow and arrows and the two colossal objects. The bow and arrows were in no way inferior to the Yama's seal. One had to know that the Yama's seal was one of the top treasures in the ghost realm. From this, one could see how extraordinary the bow and arrows were. The two kings of hell started to have some ideas. If they could kill others and steal their treasures, with the bow and arrows, or even these two behemoths, their strength in the ghost realm would definitely increase by leaps and bounds, leaving the other kings of hell far behind. King Yangluo glanced at the Chakravarti king. He knew that the latter had the same idea as him. His heart tightened as he thought to himself, "This is Fengdu City, my territory. How can I allow you to get your hands on these two magic treasures?" Tang Zheng didn't know what the other party was thinking. He just kept on rushing out. In the blink of an eye, he had rushed out of the Yama Hall and into the streets of Fengdu City. In an instant, everyone in the ghost realm raised their heads and looked over. Without a doubt, the four supremes had become the focus of attention. Everyone was muttering. Who was it that dared to be so unscrupulous in Fengdu City? The four supremes were very fast, but King Yangluo and the Chakravarti king were not slow either. Riding on clouds, they arrived behind the four supremes one after the other. As the two of them were suspended in mid-air, the four supremes lost part of their advantage. Without hesitation, the two of them raised the Yama's seal again. Rumble. The black clouds pressed down. This time, the momentum was even more shocking. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. The Yama's seal rushed into the sky and merged with the black clouds, becoming one with them. It also became a huge monster. The black clouds and lightning lingered in the sky, each attacking the two four symbols venerables. Rumble. The four supremes had no choice but to stop in their tracks. They fell to the ground with two thuds. The two Yama's seals pressed down on their bodies. The immense force made it impossible for them to move. The two kings of hell looked pleased. They looked at each other and rushed over as fast as lightning. Neither of them wanted to leave the spoils for the other. Tang Zheng, what do we do now? Yi Xuanji was dizzy but anxious. He thought that victory was in sight, but in the end, he couldn't move. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Tang Zheng was too weak after all. However, he immediately blushed. He couldn't even resist, but he said that Tang Zheng was weak. He was a little shameless. Tang Zheng felt the immense force on his body. Veins popped out on his forehead and cold sweat broke out. This was the most dangerous situation he had ever faced. He had underestimated his opponent too much. However, he didn't give up. He shouted unyieldingly, "You think you can capture me like this? Don't even think about it." Rumble. Two more four supremes rushed out from the Sumeru pouch. They grabbed the two Yama's seals and used all their strength. "Rise!" Tang Zheng roared. The Yama's seals finally lifted a little. The two supremes were finally free. Fart. Tang Zheng spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as white as paper. Although it was just summoning two more supremes, the test for Tang Zheng was unimaginable. Although the supremes were powerful, controlling them consumed too much true qi and mental strength. In the past, he could only control one supremes. Two was already his limit. However, in order to survive this time, he had to take the risk. The result of the risk was that his true qi was shaken and his internal organs were displaced. If it wasn't for his solid foundation, he would have died. However, this scene stunned everyone in the world of spirits and souls. Even King Yangluo and King Kakravati were suspended in mid-air in a daze. Why did two more big guys suddenly appear? King Kakravati smacked his lips and couldn't help but exclaim. King Yenluo's face was pale. He thought that the two Yamas seals would be enough to suppress the other party. However, he didn't expect the other party to have a trick up his sleeve. While King Yangluo was in a daze, Tang Zheng quickly put the three supremes back into his Sumeru pouch, ignoring his shaken true qi and internal injuries. His power and mental strength were barely enough to control 4 symbols venerable, so how could he possibly control 4 symbols venerables? He dragged his exhausted body and drove the 4 symbols venerables toward the towering city walls of Necropolis. The others didn't know that he was already at the end of his rope. They watched him escape, but no one dared to act rashly. Finally, King Yangluo came back to his senses and roared, "Stop right there." Whoosh! Riding on the clouds, he gave chase. However, the Supremes were already at the edge of the walls. With a leap, they soared into the sky and crossed the towering walls. There's no land below. His feet were in the air. Tang Zheng was shocked. Outside the walls was a bottomless abyss. Fengdu City was built on top of a barren mountain. The cliffs were steep and the mountain was thousands of feet high. Mount Yanfu was a famous mountain in the Ghost Realm. It wasn't famous for its height, nor was it famous for Fengdu City on top of the mountain. The most famous thing was the river at the foot of the mountain. River Styx. People called it the River of Death. Tang Zheng watched as the 4 divine beasts fell into the river. Chapter 604. Styx River, also known as the River of Death, was one of the most dangerous places in the ghost world. It circled around the Jambu Mountain and was equivalent to the moat of Fengdu City. Fengdu City was only connected to the outside world by an iron chain bridge. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Therefore, Fengdu City had a unique advantage and became the most heavily guarded fortress in the ghost world. The water in Styx River had no buoyancy. Anything, even a feather, would sink immediately if it fell on it. Even if you were a swimmer, the fish in the water could not survive in Styx River. Once they fell into the river, they would be buried at the bottom. Even King Yangluo did not dare to take the risk. Thus, when he saw Tang Zheng hiding among the 4 divine beasts and falling into the underworld river like a meteor, he hurriedly stopped his forward momentum and stopped on the towering walls of Fengdu City as he stared at the colossus with a burning gaze. The others also caught up and looked at this scene in a daze. Soon after, they were overjoyed. This guy was really reckless. He trespassed into Fengdu City and finally lost his life. However, King Yangluo and King Kakravati were slightly disappointed because the 2 powerful magic treasures were buried at the bottom of the river and did not fall into their hands. Something is wrong. There is still 1 arrow left. King Yangluo suddenly had an idea. He turned around and ran. Finally, he found an arrow on the broken beam of the meeting hall. This was the shooting sun arrow shot by Tang Zheng. Unfortunately, he could not retrieve it and it benefited King Yangluo. King Yangluo caressed the body of the arrow and waves of mana rippled. He was overjoyed. This must be a divine weapon. I must keep it and treat it as compensation for this loss. Whoosh! A strong wind blew. King Kakravati stood in front of King Yangluo and stared at the shooting sun arrow. King Yangluo laughed mockingly and asked, "You want it?" King Kakravati's expression changed. Of course he wanted it. He had seen the power of this arrow. It was not an ordinary magic treasure to be able to fight against King Yenluo's seal. However, the Kakravati king wasn't as strong as the King of Hell. Furthermore, this was the King of Hell's territory. He didn't have any advantage in terms of timing, location, and people. Hence, he could only be envious and definitely wouldn't take it for himself. The Kakravati king smiled sheepishly. Of course not. These are your spoils of war. Where's that guy? Sinking to the bottom of the Nether River means certain death. The Kakravati king's face darkened. He was the cause of this incident. Not only did he not gain anything out of it, he even got himself into trouble. It's good that he's dead. Then there won't be anyone whose lifespan will increase for no reason in the future. This matter will come to an end for the time being. King Yama closed the coffin and concluded. The Chakravarti king nodded with a meaningful smile. However, he knew in his heart that the impact of this intruder on the ghost realm would definitely not be limited to this. The fact that the King Yangluo did not capture the intruder alive would cause his prestige to be tarnished, which would cause the other kings of hell to be restless. There would be undercurrents in the world of spirits and souls. Of course, Tang Zheng did not know that his actions would have such a huge impact on the world of spirits and souls. He was currently sinking rapidly to the bottom of the river. He had already tried to get out of the body of the 4 divine beasts, but he realized that the river water had no buoyancy at all. He was like a piece of heavy iron, sinking rapidly. Moreover, there was no oxygen in the river water. One must know that after he cultivated the dragon god technique, he could breathe freely in the water. However, there was no oxygen in the water here. There was nothing he could do and he would suffocate to death. He quickly got back into the body of the 4 divine beasts and used the remaining air to survive. However, when he saw Yi Xuanzhi's soul, his expression changed drastically. Yi Xuanzhi's soul had become much fainter, like a wisp of green smoke that was about to float away. What's going on? Tang Zheng was shocked. Yi Xuanzhi was in extreme pain. He said, I feel like my body is about to fall apart. My life is slipping away bit by bit. Tang Zheng was shocked. This must be because of the river water. Otherwise, why did no one chase after him? With the style of King Yangluo and King Chakravarti, they would not just watch him fall to the bottom of the river. There must be something wrong with the river water that made them fearful and did not dare to step into it. Your soul is weakening. Soon, your soul will disperse. Tang Zheng circulated his energy and immediately understood what was going on with Yi Xuanzhi. Disperse. Yi Xuanzhi's expression changed drastically. He was scared out of his wits. After experiencing so many things, his nerves had become very weak. If it was a normal person, they would have been scared out of their wits. It was already commendable for him to be able to hold on until now. Tang Zheng, you must save me. You can't just watch me die. You are Ding Dong's boyfriend. Yi Xuanzhi said anxiously. Tang Zheng was slightly startled. The Yi Xuanzhi in the past was not so weak and would not beg so humbly. It seemed that the incident in the ghost realm had a big impact on him. Even his temper and personality had changed a lot. Of course I won't just watch you die. But now, I can't even protect myself. Tang Zheng said calmly. Why? There's something wrong with this river. We can't go up. No, you must have a way. You can even come to the ghost realm. You must have a way to go ashore. Yi Xuanzhi said. Tang Zheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. He had already tried just now. The river was not wide. Under normal circumstances, he could drive the 4 divine beasts to walk along the riverbed. But just now, when he tried to move, the 4 divine beasts could not move. It was as if there was an invisible force in the river that imprisoned the 4 divine beasts. But Tang Zheng was not as calm as he looked. Since the river water could devour souls, he would soon follow in Yi Xuanzhi's footsteps. The river water flowed slowly. It circled around the Jambu mountain and flowed into the distance. The 4 divine beasts were carried by the river water to an unknown place. Yi Xuanzhi kept urging Tang Zheng to think of a way. It was like a swarm of flies buzzing around Tang Zheng's ears. Tang Zheng gradually became distracted. He could not concentrate at all. Suddenly, he frowned and could not help but scold, "Shut up. If you want to live, then be quiet." Yi Xuanzhi was stunned. If it was in the past, he would have long lost control of his temper, but at this moment, he was like a docile sheep, obediently shutting his mouth. He even glanced at Tang Zheng with a bit of reverence. At this moment, if Tang Zheng wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. His little life was in Tang Zheng's hands. He did not dare to disobey Tang Zheng's wishes. Tang Zheng closed his eyes and rested. He circulated the ancient clear heaven scroll and divine dragon art to cultivate. Just now, he had suffered heavy injuries. In fact, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. If he did not fall into the river Styx, he would have become King Yama's captive. But now that he was in a desperate situation, it was not much better. The most important thing now was to recover his strength and then think of a way to escape. Time passed little by little. Yi Xuanji's whole body was in pain as if 10,000 insects were biting him. But he gritted his teeth and endured it, so as not to affect Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng suddenly exhaled a long breath. It was as if a long sword had been spat out from his mouth. He felt refreshed. The congested blood in his body and the displaced internal organs were almost completely healed, so he stopped the healing. Opening his eyes, he saw Yi Xuanji's painful appearance. He nodded calmly and said, "Do you know why I came to save you?" Yi Xuanji shook his head weakly. "If it wasn't for the sake of Dingdong's family, why would I take the risk to make this trip?" "Yes, thank you." "You don't have to thank me. You should thank Dingdong's family. Your other son is obstructing me in every possible way. It seems that he doesn't want you to wake up." Tang Zheng did not mind taking the opportunity to make Yi Tianming look bad. Doesn't he know that he has always coveted the position of patriarch? "I won't let you have your way. On the contrary, Uncle Yi and Aunt Feng have always been good to me. I helped them to consolidate their strength in the Ye family. Of course, I am duty-bound to help them." "How dare you? When I go back, I must teach Tianming a lesson." Yi Xuanji was furious. You raised a son for a lifetime, but in the end, you don't care about your life or death. Your life is really sad," Tang Zheng said jokingly. Yi Xuanji's face was ugly, but he had no way to refute. In fact, there were many power struggles in big families. There were countless cases of brothers and fathers fighting openly and secretly. In ancient times, there were many cases of princes killing their own father to become emperor. So, Yi Xuanji did not doubt Tang Zheng's words. This was equivalent to planting a seed of doubt in Yi Xuanji's heart. It was enough to make Yi Tianming suffer. Tang Zheng did not care about Yi Xuanji's thoughts. Instead, he channeled his energy to perceive the situation outside. The river was still flowing outside. It was dead silent. There were no creatures in the river. Moreover, this place was no longer under the Jambu Mountain. He did not know where it had drifted to. "I'm afraid that King Yangluo and King Kakravati already think that I am dead. This is good. If I can escape, then they will not continue to pursue the matter of the life-continuing pill. I will have time to carry out the plan of the 5-clawed golden dragon and use the tree of life to stir up the ghost realm. In fact, if he could return to the human realm, he would be fine even if he did not carry out the plan." However, after this trip to the ghost realm, he realized that the power of the ghost realm far exceeded that of the human realm. For the future of the human realm, the plan was urgent. His perception spread very slowly in the river. An invisible force was suppressing him, making it difficult for him to move. After a long time, he was almost exhausted. He hurriedly channeled his energy to recover. His breathing involuntarily became rapid. The oxygen in the body of the 4 symbols reverend had become very thin. Although he was trying his best to control his breathing rate, he was gradually in a state of hypoxia. "Calm down. The more dangerous it is, the calmer it is," he kept silently reminding himself. However, his heart failed to live up to his expectations and beat violently. He hoped to absorb more oxygen to supply his body. After thinking about it, he tried all the possible methods. In the end, he found that he still could not drive the 4 symbols reverend to escape the river of death. His consciousness gradually became erratic. Only the sound of his heart beating was left in his ears. It was as if his heart was going to jump out of his throat. Chapter 605. Looking at Tang Zheng's situation, Yi Xuanji was extremely anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He wanted to keep urging him, but in the end, he held back. Tang Zheng felt that his soul was about to leave his body. The feeling of drifting was getting stronger and stronger, as if his soul was about to fly up into the sky. His heart was beating violently, and his breathing became hurried. He gasped for air, but there was too little air. After a while, the air was about to dry up. Bang! 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 Tang Zheng's breathing stopped, but the sound of his heartbeat reverberated in all directions, like the muffled sound of a heavy hammer hitting a drum, causing one's heart to tremble. A strong life force was constantly replenishing his 8 extraordinary meridians from his heart, and his pale cheeks immediately turned red. Whoosh! Tang Zheng's eyes suddenly opened, and a red light appeared, like a red sun. Looking at this pair of eyes, the dying Yi Xuanji was startled, and there was a tremor from the depths of his soul. This pair of eyes seemed to have magic. Ghost realm, river styx, humph, you want to trap me just like that? Tang Zheng spoke, and his voice was completely different from before. Tang Zheng, quickly think of a way, don't dawdle. Yi Xuanji saw him talking to himself, and finally couldn't help but urge him. Who do you think you are? How dare you order me around? Tang Zheng's eyes flashed, and he glanced at Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji felt as if he was struck by lightning, and there was an explosion in his mind, as if his soul was about to completely scatter. You! How did you change? Yi Xuanji's expression changed greatly, and he asked in fear. Tang Zheng snorted, and didn't say anything. He waved his hands, and with 3 loud sounds, 3 undercurrents surged in the river styx. 3-4 symbols venerable appeared. 4-4 symbols venerable stood quietly on the riverbed, and they were extremely quiet, emitting an exceptionally mysterious aura. When Yi Xuanji saw this gigantic creature again, he still felt his heart palpitate. Back then, a single 4 symbols venerable was able to take care of the Chu family's patriarch, so he, Yi Xuanji, was simply not enough in front of this big fellow, let alone facing 4 of them at once. However, he still had huge doubts about Tang Zheng in his heart. What had happened to him? Whether it was his aura or his tone, it was completely different from before. When Yi Xuanji faced the current Tang Zheng, he even felt as insignificant as an ant. This was too absurd. A sliver of recollection appeared in Tang Zheng's eyes as he looked at the 4 symbols venerable. He muttered to himself, for symbols venerable, you've been covered in dust for countless years. You're truly a pearl covered in dust. I hope you will shine brilliantly in the future and rebuild your former glory. Yi Xuanji still did not understand the specific meaning of this sentence, because, according to his point of view, the 4 symbols venerable was already powerful enough. If this was called a pearl covered in dust, then just how powerful was it back then? Let's get through this crisis first. Tang Zheng was in high spirits as he roared, for symbols fusion. The 4-4 symbols venerable emitted a mysterious light as they gradually got closer to each other. In the end, they tightly stuck together. A miraculous scene appeared. These 4 giants actually quickly fused with each other and were gradually enveloped by the light that burst out. After a while, they turned into a ball of light, and the true appearance of the 4 symbols venerable could not be seen clearly. Crack! As if lightning streaked across the night sky, a ray of light swept across the deathly still water of the styx river, causing the river water to boil like boiling water. Gurgle! Large bubbles rolled up from the river water, rushing to the surface. As the light dissipated, the 4 symbols venerable revealed their true appearance. The 4 symbols venerable had actually fused into one, becoming a 4 symbols venerable. This 4 symbols venerable's power was clearly more mysterious and powerful. Swoosh! The 4 symbols venerable's eyes suddenly opened. 2 rays of light shot forward like lightning. His eyeballs also started rolling, filled with boundless vitality, completely different from the previous puppet. Master, you've finally awakened me. A pleasantly surprised voice resounded in his ears. Yi Xuanji was confused. He looked around but could not find the source of the voice. However, his gaze immediately fell on Tang Zheng, staring at him in disbelief. Who's calling, master? Who's this master? Could it be that brat Tang Zheng? Yi Xuanji had mixed feelings, but his mind was also shaken. His question was immediately answered. Tang Zheng arrogantly ordered and said condescendingly, "Take us out of the river styx." "Yes, master." The 4 symbols venerable nodded. His body shone brightly as he kicked off the riverbed. Splash! The river water automatically parted to 2 sides, as if there was an invisible force forcing the river water, making it unable to resist. The water of the styx river, which had no buoyancy and could devour everything, was actually unable to trap the 4 symbols venerable. The 4 symbols venerable soared into the sky. Splash! He brought Tang Zheng and Yi Xuanji to the surface of the water. The four symbols venerable rapidly approached the riverbank as if he was walking on flat ground. Finally, the four symbols venerable came ashore. Get out! Before the water on his body had dried, Tang Zheng coldly shouted at Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji felt the world spin around him and the scene before his eyes changed. He had actually left the four symbols venerable's body and stepped onto the hard river bank. Yi Xuanji looked up at the four symbols venerable and silently wondered what kind of existence Tang Zheng was in there. Although he had been reprimanded by Tang Zheng, Yi Xuanji could not feel the slightest bit of anger. This was because, from Tang Zheng's tone and demeanor, it was as if that sentence and attitude were only natural. Talking to Yi Xuanji was like a gift from the heavens. It was a great honor for you. This feeling was very strange. It made Yi Xuanji feel both respect and fear. Because of the Styx river's devouring, Yi Xuanji's soul had become very faint. It felt as if it could float away at any time. There was nothing he could do. He could only look at the four symbols venerable and imagine what was going on inside. Tang Zheng looked around, his eyes rippling. He emotionally stroked the inner wall of the four symbols venerable and said emotionally, "How many years has it been? I always thought that I would never have the chance to see you again. I never thought that we would meet again. Master, if you raise your arm and call, all of the 9 Li tribe's old subordinates will continue to follow you and rebuild their former glory." The four symbols venerable said emotionally. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed. This day will come one day. I believe it's not far away. I'm currently residing in this brat's body, so I'm temporarily unable to use my former power. That's this brat's honor. In the future, he will also have the chance to follow Master. The four symbols venerable said. Tang Zheng's smile was very strange. How could a celestial follow someone else so easily? A celestial is the leader of a heavenly king, the king. As long as others follow him, he will always stand proudly at the bow of the ship. The four symbols venerable was shocked and said meaningfully, "Then we definitely can't let him live in this world." Tang Zheng laughed non-committally. His laughter was strange and gave people a hair-raising feeling. I've already fused the sword soul into his battle soul sword. This can be considered giving him a little benefit. This brat probably won't be able to guess my true thoughts even in his dreams. The four symbols venerable cried out in shock. Master gave him the sword soul. This is the sword soul of Master's sword back then. It's a peerless treasure. This is only temporary. Tang Zheng said meaningfully, from now on, your consciousness has already been revived. You will also need to follow by his side. However, during the time I've been in contact with him, I've discovered that this brat is too smart. If there's even the slightest movement, he'll find clues. To be safe, I'll erase your memories from just now. You need to serve him with all your heart, just like how you treat me. Protect him thoroughly. Ah, Master, then when can I see you again? The four symbols venerable asked reluctantly. When the time is right, we'll naturally meet again. The four symbols venerable really wanted to ask his master what exactly his plans were, but he swallowed the words back down. His eyes burned with passion, as if he was recalling the days when his blood surged. Tang Zheng raised his head and suddenly pressed a spot on the wall. The wall shone brightly, then disappeared without a trace with a whoosh. The memories of the four symbols venerable had been completely erased. Tang Zheng slowly closed his eyes, the red in his eyes disappearing. Hey, what's going on? Tang Zheng suddenly woke up and opened his eyes. He discovered that he was actually still alive and standing safely inside the four symbols venerable's body. The air had become abundant again. Ah, we've escaped the river Styx. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. How did I know that was the river Styx? In the past, he suddenly patted his head and felt a little dizzy, as if he had just fallen asleep. Master. The four symbols venerable's voice rang out. Who is it? Who's talking? Tang Zheng was shocked and immediately turned pale with fright. Master, I'm the four symbols venerable. The four symbols venerable? How can you speak? Tang Zheng was dumbstruck. I don't know either, but someone used the four symbols fusion technique and combined the four symbols venerable. Then I gained consciousness. The four symbols fusion technique. Tang Zheng's eyes gradually became deep as he recalled the matter of the sword attendant. Back then, a series of mysterious events had occurred while he was unconscious. He concluded that it was definitely the work of Kai Yu's heart. Could it be that this was also the work of Kai Yu's heart? Recently, Kai Yu's heart had been very active. Venerable four symbols, does all of this have anything to do with Kai Yu's heart? Tang Zheng asked straightforwardly. Back then, the Sword Soul's memories had been completely erased, making it impossible for him to truly investigate. Thus, he placed his hopes on the four symbols Venerable. The four symbols Venerable said blankly, I don't know either. Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel discouraged. Whether there was a mistake or not, no one knew. This Kai Yu's heart was too mysterious, not leaving behind any clues. Master, we shouldn't stay here for long. Let's leave first. Tang Zheng seemed to have woken up from a dream. This was the ghost realm. If they were discovered, it would be terrible. He could slowly think about all the problems after returning. When Tang Zheng walked out of the four symbols Venerable's body, he discovered that Yi Xuanji was looking at him as if he was looking at the stars and the moon. When he saw his figure, he was suddenly startled, and then became wild with joy. He directly pounced towards Tang Zheng, like a drowning person grabbing onto a life-saving straw, tightly grabbing onto Tang Zheng's arm. He was incomparably excited, but his expression was filled with reverence. Chapter 606. Facing the overjoyed Yi Xuanji, Tang Zheng looked a little embarrassed, but Yi Xuanji was even more embarrassed, and said angrily, It's good that you're okay. What happened just now? We actually came out unscathed. What was my situation just now? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Yi Xuanji was stunned, and looked at him suspiciously, not knowing why he asked such a question. After a moment of hesitation, he told him the truth. You were like a completely different person just now, like a stranger. Yi Xuanji muttered in his heart. He was even in awe of Tang Zheng just now, but at this moment, he could not say such words. Tang Zheng understood. This must be the work of Kai Yu's heart. It controlled his thoughts again. He could not help but frown deeply. This kind of thing happened twice in a row, and not long after. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Ah, my hand. Suddenly, Yi Xuanji screamed, pulling Tang Zheng back from his thoughts. His left hand was already distorted, as if it was about to turn into a wisp of black gas. Oh no, the Styx river just now has the effect of devouring souls. Your soul has already been damaged. If you don't quickly return to the human world and let your soul return to Yang, then something bad will happen. Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not dare to delay any longer, and quickly put the four symbols Venerable back into his Sumeru pouch, but he immediately found a clue. The four symbols Venerable after fusing was easier to control, but Tang Zheng felt that its power would definitely be stronger than the four symbols Venerable alone. Let's return to the human world. Tang Zheng took out the Black Ghost Messenger token, and activated it with his true qi. Previously, he used this token to enter the ghost world, but ended up in the Kakravati King's territory. Because this token was issued by the Kakravati King, it would naturally come to the Kakravati King's territory. But returning to the human world was not that troublesome. He could use this token anywhere to return to the human world. Tang Zheng did not know this information, but it did not stop him from trying, so after a try, the token actually worked. The ghost gate opened. Tang Zheng grabbed Yi Xuanji's collar and jumped into the ghost gate. With a flash of light, the ghost gate disappeared. There was no longer any aura of these two in the vast ghost realm. The night was as vast as water, shrouding the Ye family's huge courtyard house. It was silent, and many houses had turned off their lights. However, the small courtyard and room that Yi Xuanji lived in were brightly lit and there were not many guards. Yi Xuanji laid on the bed motionlessly. His face was covered with a layer of green gas, as if he could die at any moment. Beside the bed sat two exhausted people, Yi Tianlei and Yi Dingdang. Yi Tianlei obeyed Tang Zheng's instructions, and absolutely could not allow Yi Xuanji's body to be harmed in the slightest. Therefore, these past few days, he barely blinked as he stared unblinkingly at Yi Xuanji, ensuring that he did not make the slightest mistake. Yi Dingdang obeyed Tang Zheng's instructions and left the small courtyard. Later, She found out that Tang Zheng went to the ghost realm alone to save someone. This news was novel and shocking, causing her heart to be in a mess. She could not sleep well at all, and was worried about Tang Zheng's safety every day. In the end, she could not help but break Tang Zheng's instructions and stay in this room every day, waiting for Tang Zheng's triumphant return. Because Tang Zheng had already absorbed most of the yin qi in this small courtyard, this environment did not harm Yi Dingdang much. Whoosh! A cold wind blew, and a black door slowly opened in front of the bed. A person walked out from behind the black door. Yi Tianlei and his daughter suddenly raised their heads and looked at Tang Zheng with surprise and joy. Yi Tianlei exclaimed, "Tang Zheng, you're finally back." Yi Dingdang was wild with joy, and threw herself into Tang Zheng's embrace, buried her head deep into his chest, and said emotionally, "I've been waiting for you to come back." However, the father and daughter could not see Yi Xuanji's ghost. Yi Xuanji stared blankly at them and looked around. When he found that there was no one else around, he could not help but frown, somewhat displeased. His life and death were unknown, but only this father and daughter pair took care of him. Where did the others go? He really wanted to grab the others and interrogate them, but he was helpless because he was a ghost and could not do anything to others. Even Yi Tianlei and his daughter could not see his soul. "Where's the old man?" Yi Tianlei was the first to react, and anxiously asked with concern. Yi Xuanji looked at Yi Tianlei with gratification, and secretly nodded. He wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Tang Zheng let go of Yi Dingdang, patted her hair, and signaled her to calm down. Then, he meaningfully glanced at Yi Dingdang's soul, and said, "His soul has returned." "His soul has returned, that's great." Yi Tianlei was overjoyed. "Then where is it?" "Right in front of you." Yi Tianlei was startled, and blinked his eyes as he stared in front of him, only to find that there was nothing in front of him. "He's a soul, you can't see him," Tang Zheng explained. Yi Dingdang looked at the void with interest, and snuggled into Tang Zheng's embrace, as if she was a little afraid of this scene. "Then hurry up and wake up the old man." Yi Tianlei did not have any thoughts of fear, and only wanted to wake Yi Xuanji up. "As you wish." Tang Zheng clapped his hands, let go of Yi Dingdang, and walked straight to the bedside. Seeing Yi Dingdang's ashen face and weak breathing, he said with relief, "At least it's not too late." After saying this, he waved his hand in the direction of Yi Xuanji's soul, and Yi Xuanji's soul flew up, and lightly floated above his body. Yi Xuanji suddenly had a strange feeling, as if he was looking down at his own body. This feeling was not something that normal people could experience. "Tang Zheng, thank you." Yi Xuanji nodded towards Tang Zheng to express his gratitude. Tang Zheng was expressionless, and patted Yi Xuanji's chest with his palm, and a strong suction force was generated from his chest, like a whirlpool. Whoosh! The soul was completely absorbed into Yi Xuanji's body, and everything returned to normal. Seeing that Tang Zheng stopped casting, Yi Tianlei nervously asked, "How is it?" "All right, let's wait for him to wake up." "Thirsty." Suddenly, Yi Xuanji's weak voice sounded, and his eyes gradually opened. A light flashed, and then, it was replaced by intense fatigue. Yi Tianlei was wild with joy, and hurriedly handed over the cup of water, and said, "Drink some water." Yi Xuanji happily drank a few mouthfuls of water, and let out a long sigh of relief. Then, he turned his head, and suspiciously looked around. Finally, his eyes fell on Tang Zheng, and asked, "What happened to me?" Yi Tianlei said in bewilderment, "You can't remember? You were unconscious, and in order to save you, Tang Zheng did not hesitate to brave danger, and bravely entered the ghost realm to save your soul, and let your soul return to life." Yi Xuanji's brows furrowed even tighter, and said, "Why can't I remember anything?" Tang Zheng, who had been silent all this time, was shocked when he heard this. Yi Tianlei was also slightly startled, and then looked at Tang Zheng, and asked, "Why can't he remember anything?" Tang Zheng thought hard, and said, "Maybe his soul was hurt, but this is not a big deal, as long as there is no big problem, everything will be fine." "His soul was hurt?" Yi Tianlei was shocked. Tang Zheng nodded, and said, "This is just my guess, but as long as he is fine, we can ignore other things for the time being." Yi Xuanji listened to Tang Zheng's words, but there was no reaction on the surface, but there was a flash of joy and guilt in the depths of his eyes, and silently thought, Tang Zheng, I'm sorry, if I don't pretend to lose my memory, I really don't know how to face you. It turned out that Yi Xuanji deliberately lied about losing his memory. He remembered everything in the ghost realm clearly, and the shock in his heart could be imagined. But in the face of Tang Zheng's life-saving grace, he had no way to repay it. Moreover, with his attitude towards Tang Zheng back then, he didn't know how to face Tang Zheng. In the end, amnesia became the best excuse. Bang! At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open from the outside, making a loud noise. A few people rushed in. It was Yi Tianming and his daughter. Old master, you're finally awake. We've been waiting for you for so long, and you're finally back. Yi Tianming said excitedly, with a rich expression. A hint of coldness flashed in Yi Xuanji's eyes, but he immediately hid it. If Tang Zheng hadn't told him about Yi Tianming's actions in advance, he definitely wouldn't have guessed that Yi Tianming almost killed him. Yi Xuanji nodded gently, and said, Thank you for your hard work. Yi Meiyu stepped forward and affectionately held Yi Xuanji's palm, and said, Grandpa, I've been praying to the gods. The gods must have heard my prayers and finally returned you to my side. Yi Meiyu lied without blinking. She had never prayed before. If Yi Tianming hadn't insisted on grounding her, she would have run out to fool around long ago. Why would she care about Yi Xuanji's life and death? Yi Xuanji was expressionless, and his gaze turned to Yi Ku. This was his most satisfied grandson, but he didn't expect that she would almost become an accomplice this time. His previous vision was too inaccurate, and was not much different from a blind man. Yi Ku grabbed Yi Xuanji's hand and said excitedly, Grandpa, have a good rest and recover as soon as possible. We must investigate this matter thoroughly. Yi Xuanji already knew that this matter was caused by the life-continuing pill, but he didn't blame Tang Zheng at all. In fact, this couldn't be blamed on Tang Zheng at all. If there wasn't the life-continuing pill, Yi Xuanji would have died long ago. Moreover, Tang Zheng didn't hesitate to risk his life to rescue him, which could be considered as being extremely benevolent. Since it's over, then forget it. I just want to be safe and sound. Yi Xuanji rejected. He already knew the answer, so there was no need to investigate thoroughly. The others didn't know the reason, but seeing that Yi Xuanji was determined to do so, they didn't dare to persuade him again. However, Yi Tianming and his two daughters looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated gaze. Originally, they didn't have much hope, but they didn't expect that Tang Zheng would really succeed. This time, Yi Tianlei's position in Yi Xuanji's heart would rise. He had to find a way to make up for his impression in the old man's heart. Chapter 607. Tang Zheng did not care about the scheming of the Ye family. Since Yi Xuanji was fine, he would naturally take his leave. Yi Xuanji sent Tang Zheng off with a complicated expression. His heart moved, and he said without batting an eyelid, Ding dang, go and send him off. When everyone heard this, their expressions were all different. In the past, Yi Xuanji had always been blunt towards Tang Zheng, and even wished that he could cut off all relations with Tang Zheng. This time, he actually took the initiative to ask Tang Zheng to send him off. Yi Tianming's heart was in turmoil. He thought to himself that his worries had come true. The old man's attitude towards this brat had undergone a subtle change. Yi Tianming and Feng Xinyang, who had rushed over, looked at each other and smiled. This time, they had accidentally changed Yi Xuanji's impression of them. Then, the matter between their daughter and Tang Zheng would have a new turn of events. In fact, Yi Xuanji's emotions were also very complicated. The trip to the ghost realm had broadened his horizons, so there was actually such a magical land in a place that he did not know of. In addition, Tang Zheng's various actions had a strong impact on him. It turned out that he was the one who had truly hidden his strength, especially in the body of the four symbols venerable. The aura that Tang Zheng displayed when he was controlled by Kaiyu's heart caused Yi Xuanji to be both shocked and afraid. In the end, he did not even dare to ask about this matter. In short, Tang Zheng was definitely much more powerful than he had imagined. He suddenly realized, no wonder that old fellow Yang Potian did not hesitate to offend the Li Palace to protect Tang Zheng. Perhaps he had already discovered that Tang Zheng was extraordinary, which was why he dared to take such a huge risk. It was laughable that he actually couldn't wait to cut ties with Tang Zheng. He was truly sitting on a treasure mountain, but he didn't know it and instead pushed the treasure mountain into the arms of others. He couldn't help but curse himself for being old and foolish. It was not too late to mend the pen after the sheep had been lost. From now on, he had to firmly grasp onto Tang Zheng, this tree that was about to grow. However, due to his reputation, he could not personally make an appearance, so this task naturally fell to Yi Dingdang. Yi Dingdang was stunned for a moment, then immediately became excited. She didn't even care about the others and directly hugged Tang Zheng's arm in front of everyone and left the room with him. Yi Dingdang was overjoyed as she looked at Tang Zheng with sparkling eyes. In the past, she still had a kind of unyielding spirit towards Tang Zheng, but now she was completely convinced. How did you do it? All the famous doctors in the capital were helpless, but you cured him so quickly. Yi Dingdang couldn't help but ask curiously. Tang Zheng puffed up his chest and pretended to be mysterious. Of course, don't you know who I am? Page, shameless. Yi Dingdang pouted, but the pride between her eyebrows was completely revealed. This made her even happier than her own martial arts increasing. How has your martial arts progressed during this time? Tang Zheng asked with concern. Yi Dingdang's face immediately filled with a confident smile as she said, I have already cultivated the Jade Women's Heart Sutra to the large success stage. Furthermore, I have been practicing the wind-chasing sword technique every day. Right now, I have already memorized the sword technique. My battle strength is like heaven and earth compared to before. Yi Dingdang was not exaggerating. She had quite a bit of talent in martial arts. After practicing the Jade Women's Heart Sutra day and night, her body had greatly improved. However, the Jade Women's Heart Sutra was a heart technique and not a technique. When Tang Zheng taught her the wind-chasing sword technique, it immediately made up for the shortcomings of the Jade Women's Heart Sutra, causing her strength to greatly increase. The wind-chasing sword technique was a sword technique left behind in Caillou's heart. It was not inferior to the heaven-flying immortal. Moreover, this sword technique did not require true qi or inner strength to drive it. It was completely a sword technique. This could save a lot of energy in battle, allowing one to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Then I will find a time to properly test you. Tang Zheng said with a smile. Yi Dingdang's eyebrows rose. She was ready to move as she said, I will accompany you anytime. Tang Zheng. Suddenly, an explosive shout rang out. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, interrupting the conversation between the two people. Yi Dingdang was like a little cat whose tail had been stepped on. Her entire body trembled as her hair stood on end. She vigilantly looked forward. Tang Zheng's expression did not change. With a calm and flirtatious look, he asked, It's the middle of the night. What are you shouting for? You will scare people to death. You also know that you will scare people to death. Just where have you been these past 2 days? I have almost turned the entire capital upside down, but I still haven't found you. Wu Zhen's heart was burning with anxiety as she angrily roared. At this moment, she was like an angry lioness. Her eyes were about to spit out flames of anger. But Yi Dingdang, this little tabby cat, was not someone to be trifled with. When she clearly saw who it was, she immediately jumped in front of Tang Zheng to protect him and retorted without fear, Why are you making such a big fuss? Where Tang Zheng goes, why should I report to you? Wu did not even look at Yi Dingdang. He treated her as air and walked straight towards Tang Zheng. With an unfriendly expression, he said, I promised Sect Master and Master's wife that I would protect you well. I will not allow anything to happen to you. Tang Zheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Wu Zhen was a stubborn person. He had intentionally gotten rid of her, but he did not expect her to have such a big reaction. Of course, Tang Zheng could not get angry. After all, the other party was concerned about him, and he did not doubt the truth of her words. In the past few days, she had probably turned the entire capital upside down. However, he was not in the human world, so how could she find him? Yi Dingdang was a proud person. Seeing her beloved being reprimanded like this, how could she endure it? Don't come any closer. Otherwise, I won't be polite. I won't allow you to speak to him in such a tone. Yi Dingdang said as if she was protecting her calf. Wu Qing glanced at her and said disdainfully, "Who do you think you are? You don't have the right to speak here." She was indeed angry. But these words also poked at Wu Zhen's nerves. Her eyes widened as she angrily shouted, "I will defeat you and let you know who I am." He casually broke off a small branch and with a few rustling sounds, he danced in the air with the demeanor of a big family. Wu was confident in her strength and did not put Yi Dingdang in her eyes. With a cold snort, she walked towards her. She thought that although she could not do anything to Tang Zheng, teaching this girl who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson could be considered as venting her anger. The battle between the two beauties was on the verge of breaking out. Without any fancy moves, the two of them rushed towards each other. Tang Zheng did not even have the time to say a word to stop them. Sigh, what was the point of this? However, Tang Zheng did not rush in to stop them. Yi Dingdang's actual combat experience was too little. Marshall was a good opponent. I've endured you for a long time. Back then, I was chased by you until I was exhausted. Today, I will return all of it to you. Yi Dingdang said indignantly. This girl was also a vengeful person. Back then, she and Tang Zhong were chased by Wu Zhen in the ordinary balance and almost died. Mph, you overestimate yourself. Marshall disdainfully curled her lips and raised her palm. The air around her palm began to distort. Roaring Flame Saber, her famous consummate skill. Now that her Roaring Flame Saber was a level higher than before, its power naturally could not be underestimated. Yi Dingdang did not have the slightest bit of fear. The branch in her hand was used as a sword as she attacked Marshall. The wind-chasing sword technique paid particular attention to speed. Even the wind was caught up. Therefore, when the sword technique was released, the attack had already crossed a distance of several meters and directly arrived in front of Marshall. Marshall's expression slightly changed, but she did not move an inch. The Roaring Flame Saber opened and closed, creating a sturdy barrier in front of her chest, blocking the branch. If Yi Dingdang had a sharp sword in her hand instead of a branch, the power would definitely be higher and the threat would be greater. However, although a branch was like a sharp sword, its lethality could not be compared at all. The Roaring Flame Saber swished a few times and cut off all the branches, turning them into bare branches. Moreover, it forced Yi Dingdang to retreat step by step. Now you know the difference between us. Marshall said coldly. Yi Dingdang was extremely embarrassed. She was so embarrassed that her cheeks were red. She knew very well that she was at a disadvantage in terms of weapon. It was simply a disgrace to the wind-chasing sword technique. Whoosh! She stabbed with all her might, dangerously attacking Marshall. However, Marshall's reaction was extremely fast. The Roaring Flame Saber immediately blocked the path of the branch and easily cut it off. Then, it rushed towards Yi Dingdang. The scorching hot air caused people to suffocate. This is not fair. Tang Zheng sighed secretly. He was completely unable to achieve the goal of training Yi Dingdang. An evenly matched battle was the most exciting. Thus, he directly said, "Dingdang, I'll lend you the War Soul Sword." Yi Dingdang's eyes lit up. The War Soul Sword fell into her hands. Seeing this, Marshall's brows trembled. She coldly snorted but did not complain at all. The Roaring Flame Saber's attack immediately became even fiercer. With the treasured sword in hand, Yi Dingdang was overjoyed. She was in high spirits as she cast a grateful glance towards Tang Zheng. She immediately displayed the wind-chasing sword technique. Sword light danced in the air. Its power was not something a branch could compare to. Shua shua shua, it went straight for Marshall's vitals. Marshall's Roaring Flame Saber no longer dared to clash head-on with the War Soul Sword. The wind-chasing sword technique focused on being graceful and graceful. Its power was like thunder. The situation of the battle immediately changed. Yi Dingdang was no longer passively taking a beating. The power of the wind-chasing sword technique was completely displayed by her. Marshall's face suddenly changed as she exclaimed, "What sword technique is this?" She finally discovered the extraordinariness of this sword technique. She was sure that Yi Dingdang's cultivation was not as good as hers, But because of this sword technique, Yi Dingdang's battle prowess had greatly increased. Although Marshall believed that he would not fail, he did not have absolute confidence that he could immediately take down Tang Zheng. Yi Dingdang's eyes finally revealed a pleased expression, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. However, her attacks did not stop. Instead, they continued on. Wind-chasing sword technique. Yi Dingdang did not hide anything. Never heard of it. Marshall said doubtfully, however, its power is indeed not to be underestimated. But if you want to defeat me like this, you might not be thinking too simply. As soon as he finished speaking, many hand shadows suddenly appeared in the air. They were densely packed and rushed towards Yi Dingdang to greet him. These hand shadows were like pieces of branding iron, branding the air red. The dense qi in the air soared into the air, completely enveloping the war soul sword that was rapidly attacking. However, Yi Dingdang acted as if she did not see it. She only caused the war soul sword in her hand to shine brightly. Streaks of sword light and strange sword techniques attacked one after another. Chapter 608. The berserk aura caused people's hearts to tremble in fear. If it wasn't for the fact that it was already late at night and that this small path was deserted, it would have definitely attracted many people's attention. Following a series of firecracker-like explosions, the wind stopped and the rain stopped. The war soul sword was pressed against Marshall's chest, while Marshall's palm blade was also stuck on Yi Dingdang's neck. As long as both sides used a little more strength, they would both bleed. Seeing that, Tang Zheng immediately intervened between the two of them, and advised while beaming, "All right, let's stop here, don't hurt each other." This battle made Tang Zheng very satisfied. He had tested Yi Dingdang's true level, although in the end, both sides were able to restrain each other and seemed to be evenly matched. However, Tang Zheng understood that Yi Dingdang was not a match for Marshall. The reason why she was able to restrain Marshall was because she had the advantage of the wind-chasing sword technique. Because Marshall was completely unable to understand this mysterious sword technique, she had suffered a loss. But if the two of them were to fight again, Yi Dingdang would definitely lose. Even so, Marshall's expression could not help but change as he looked at Yi Dingdang in bewilderment. One could imagine the shock in his heart. She was very clear about the difference in cultivation between the two of them, but Yi Dingdang had actually relied on this sword technique to temporarily bridge the gap. This was something that Marshall could never have imagined in the past. "Who taught you this sword technique?" Marshall asked in a deep voice. Yi Dingdang snorted coldly. He subconsciously looked at Tang Zheng, curled his lips and said, "Why should I tell you?" Other than Tang Zheng, Yi Dingdang was the second person in the world who knew the wind-chasing sword technique. This was something that the two of them had in common, so how could Yi Dingdang casually tell others, allowing others to learn this sword technique? However, her reaction completely betrayed her. Marshall's fiery eyes immediately saw through the whole story, and looked at Tang Zheng with a strange expression, and said, "This sword technique was actually passed down from your hands." Tang Zheng did not try to hide anything. Instead, he asked with a smile, "What do you think of its power?" Wu coldly snorted and answered, "This sword technique is extremely powerful. If it were to fall into the hands of the enemy, it would be unimaginable, so don't just randomly spread it around." Wu Heng raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "What do you mean? What do you mean by anyone?" Marshall ignored him and continued to stare at Tang Zheng, asking, "Where have you been these past few days?" Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "I have some personal matters to attend to." Seeing that he was secretive, Wu knew that there was no result to asking further. He snorted unwillingly and said sternly, "In the future, if you want to go anywhere, you must tell me. This is the order of the sect master and mistress." Tang Zheng declined to comment. Tang Zheng sent Yi Dingdang back to school. Tang Zheng skipped classes for as many days as school started. Therefore, on the second day, after the first class, the class organized a class meeting. This class meeting was the first class meeting since school started. There were many topics to discuss, the most eye-catching of which was the issue of the scholarship. As the top scorer of the college entrance exam, Tang Zheng defeated everyone in the last semester's final exam and once again took first place. Tang Zheng did not care much about the scholarship issue. He was thinking about when to go to the Northwest Desert to carry out the plan against the Ghost Realm. Although Tang Zheng's exam results are first in the grade, he usually skips too many classes. His absenteeism problem is very serious. Moreover, he does not participate in the various activities of the class. This kind of solitary behavior that does not unite the students is too bad. A loud and clear voice said, "Huh." When Tang Zheng heard this, his ears immediately perked up. He raised his head and looked at the person on the podium. Tang Zheng was not familiar with the person who spoke. However, he knew that the person was the class monitor, Chen Hao. It was just that he was too isolated and did not have much contact with the class monitor. Hearing that the other party criticized him so harshly, he was not angry. Instead, he was slightly interested. Seeing that Tang Zheng was looking at him, Chen Hao arrogantly raised his neck and said arrogantly, "Tang Zheng, tell me yourself. Do your usual actions have a very bad influence?" Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said calmly, "I don't think so. Isn't university about everyone learning by themselves? I did not disturb the other students. What bad influence is there? You're twisting words and forcing logic." Chen Hao roared in exasperation, "Every time there's an activity in the school or in the class, we leave a bad impression on the school because of your absence. Don't tell me that this doesn't affect the other students." Tang Zheng touched his nose. The university seemed free, but in fact, there were many class activities. There was also a morning exercise every week. The school would take attendance, and Tang Zheng was indeed often absent. Although this did affect him a little, Tang Zheng was sure that the effect was not big. The other party was making a mountain out of a molehill. Before Tang Zheng could speak, Sinosaurus could no longer sit still. He slammed the table and roared with a voice as loud as a lion's roar, "Nonsense." Third brother's absenteeism was specially approved by Professor Qi Shoroan. The school knows that too. How can there be a bad influence? Yes, third brother has made outstanding contributions to the school. Back then, he was the martial arts champion and made everyone proud. Moreover, he was able to gain Professor Qi's favor. This is not something that normal people can do, HMPH. Wang Shiji and Zhu Yang were not willing to be left behind. They argued for Tang Zheng. The four members of Dorm 502 were very united. Although Tang Zheng was usually not in the dorm, they were very close. Everyone followed Tang Zheng's lead. Of course, they would not allow others to slander him. Seeing the three of them arguing, Chen Hao felt a little embarrassed. He said with a red face, "You are all in the same dorm. Of course you will speak up for him. Don't think that we don't know what you're thinking. We usually hear a lot of rumors. Some people wholeheartedly want to become Professor Qi's disciple, but their strength is too weak. Professor Qi doesn't even look at them, and seeing that other students have this honor, they're jealous." Zhu Yang said with a burst of blood. This was not a fabricated slander. There was indeed such a rumor. As for that person, it was of course Chen Hao. Chen Hao had been an outstanding student since he was young. He was the center of attention. After entering university, he did not want to be left behind. He made a detailed plan for himself. He started as the class monitor, then entered the student council, and finally became the student council president. The student council president of Yenqing University was not a small position. After graduation, many people could get a good job position and enter the government. Chen Hao successfully became the class monitor, but he gradually realized that he was not the center of attention. Instead, it was Tang Zheng who was the center of the crowd. Not only did he have a delicate and charming campus belle by his side, but he also had superb martial arts, which won him honor and influence that ordinary people could not reach. Chen Hao was not satisfied. He secretly swore that he would surpass Tang Zheng in the final exam. However, how could he be compared to such a monstrous person? But he did not give up. This time, the school selected scholarship. He thought it was a good opportunity to increase his influence and suppress Tang Zheng. Therefore, he specifically chose an opportunity when Tang Zheng was present to raise this sharp question. However, he did not expect the 502 dorm to be so united. They did not put him in their eyes and defended Tang Zheng so unscrupulously. Chen Hao had been in the student council for half a year and learned a lot of ways to deal with problems. He had also cultivated some shrewdness. Therefore, he did not fly into a rage. Instead, he took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said, "Rumors can't be taken seriously. Let's talk about the facts. Today, we are discussing the scholarship issue. Everything else can be put aside for now. I propose that we vote by a show of hands. Those who think that Tang Zheng's actions have affected the class, please raise your hand." Swish, swish, swish. A few of Chen Hao's best friends immediately raised their hands. Many others watched for a while and also raised their hands. Tang Zheng looked on coldly. He noticed that Chen Hao was winking at many people, and then they raised their hands. Obviously, they had communicated beforehand. Hehe, they really put in a lot of effort to target me. Tang Zheng thought jokingly. In the end, the people who raised their hands outnumbered those who did not. Chen Hao won by a small margin. Immediately, he became arrogant, as if he had something against him. He said, "See, this is the opinion of the masses. Therefore, in this scholarship selection, your moral education score will be 0. If his moral education score was 0, then the scholarship was basically out of the question. Although Tang Zheng did not care about the scholarship, it would not be good if the first place in the grade did not get a scholarship. The dormitory members could not sit still. Sinosaurus shouted, "There's something fishy about this. We can't accept it." Chen Hao's face darkened. He said, "You're doubting your classmate. You don't believe your classmate, right? I think there's a big problem with dormitory 502. They're selfish, sacrificing the interests of other students for their own personal gain." Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. This Chen Hao had a glib tongue. He was really good at twisting the truth. Of course, he would not watch his friend be criticized. Originally, he did not care about the scholarship. Since the other party was so outrageous, then this brother must get the scholarship. Chen Hao did not think that his actions would have the opposite effect, causing Tang Zheng to feel a sense of disgust as he was very pleased with his plan. Suddenly, he saw Tang Zheng stand up and walk straight towards him. His gaze was not good, causing him to jump in fright. He subconsciously jumped back and said in fear, "What are you doing? Let me tell you, beating up a classmate is against the school rules. It's against the law." Looking at his cowardly appearance, Tang Zheng disdainfully curled his lips and said, "Hitting you would only dirty my hands, but let me tell you one thing, I still have to decide on this scholarship, so you can go play by yourself." Chen Hao's face flushed red. He said, "Don't brag. This kind of thing is not something you can decide with just a few words." "Is that so? Then let's wait and see." Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. If a tiger did not show its might, people would think it was a sick cat. Chapter 609. Chen Hao gritted his teeth as he left the classroom and went straight to the school office to find Yang Liang. In the past, Yang Liang had always been proud of himself. When he graduated from his undergraduate degree, he bribed the leaders to stay in the school and became a counselor. In the past few years, he used his authority to get a postgraduate position. As a postgraduate at Yenqing University, this title was very intimidating. But ever since Tang Zheng entered the school, he realized that Tang Zheng was his nemesis. Tang Zheng repeatedly went against his wishes and embarrassed him. Especially during the martial arts convention, when Tang Zheng heavily injured Yu Zhangkue in front of him. This almost scared Yang Liang out of his wits. After that, he gave up and did not confront Tang Zheng head-on, but the hatred in his heart never disappeared. Instead, it grew with each passing day. When he heard Chen Hao's complaint, Yang Liang pondered for a moment and said with righteous indignation, "Chen Hao, you did the right thing. Students of Yenqing University should have a sense of justice." Tang Zheng relied on his close relationship with some professors to not care about the school and the school's rules. This has a very bad influence and has seriously affected the school's normal teaching order. Although his grades are not bad, if a person's morals are too bad, then what's the point of having good grades? Instead, it will cause great harm to society. "I support you." Chen Hao's eyes lit up as he beamed with joy. He originally came to ask for help with a nervous heart, but he didn't expect the counselor to be so loyal. Tang Zheng, you've made too many enemies. God is helping me, Chen Hao thought proudly. Counselor, then we should use this opportunity to give him a severe punishment. Yang Liang nodded mysteriously. It's not good for a teacher to do something like this. Otherwise, the other students will think that the teacher is targeting him. Your method is excellent. Let the students decide for themselves. This is the will of the people. Our Yanqing University values democracy the most. Although Chen Hao was slightly disappointed, he was also encouraged. His actions were recognized, so he should continue. Counselor, I understand. I will mobilize my classmates to make sure that he loses his scholarship, Chen Hao vowed. In dormitory 502, a group of people were indignant. They were all complaining about Chen Hao's treachery. Laro-san, we can't just sit here and wait for death. We have to think of a way to fight back. Chen Hao just wants to drag you down and take the scholarship for himself. Tang Zheng furrowed his eyebrows. Even though he had vowed that he would win the scholarship, he still had not thought of a way to counter it. Chen Hao used public opinion to bribe his classmates, making the majority of them stand on his side. However, Tang Zheng disdained to do so. Moreover, he had very little contact with the other students and did not have many friendships. Indeed, no one would take the risk of offending Chen Hao to support him. The one who started the trouble should end it. Since Chen Hao has caught on to my absenteeism, then there is only one person who can solve this problem. Professor Qi Shuowen. Yes, let's go find Professor Qi. The others heard Tang Zheng's suggestion and agreed. They were all students and did not have much influence. However, Professor Qi was different. He was a leading figure in the field of archaeology. One word from him could destroy Chen Hao's conspiracy. Tang Zheng arrived at Professor Qi's office and knocked on the door. Tang Zheng was about to enter when he noticed someone standing at the corner of the floor. The person was staring at him intently. Tang Zheng's eyes narrowed. This person was definitely not a staff member of the university. The person's aura was too cold, like a man of iron. He was about to go up and investigate when he heard a haggard voice coming from the office. Come in. Just as he was hesitating, the person quickly disappeared. Tang Zheng shook his head and pushed the door open. He was stunned. The office was piled with documents like a small mountain. Qi Shuowen looked particularly small compared to the pile of documents. Professor Qi. Qi Shuowen turned around slowly. Ah! Tang Zheng could not help but cry out in alarm. The two of them had not seen each other for only a few months, but Tang Zheng discovered that Professor Qi had aged a lot. His white hair had all turned silver, and the wrinkles on his face had deepened, especially the fatigue and haggardness between his eyebrows. Professor Qi, what happened to you? How did you become like this? Tang Zheng was indebted to Professor Qi. Therefore, Tang Zheng did not have any special feelings for the other teachers and leaders in the university. However, he respected and appreciated Professor Qi very much. Seeing that it was Tang Zheng, Qi Shuowen squeezed out a smile and said happily, It's you, Tang Zheng. Why are you here? When he first met Tang Zheng at the auction, especially when he saw his life-prolonging pill sold at a sky-high price, he realized that he and Tang Zheng walked different paths. After that, many things happened and he never had the chance to meet Tang Zheng again. I'm here to talk to you about something, Professor Qi. Why do you look so haggard? Tang Zheng asked with concern. Qi Shuowen squeezed out a smile and stroked his silver hair. Of course I look haggard when I'm old. Professor Qi, if there's anything I can help with, I'll do my best. Tang Zheng did not pursue the matter. Instead, he expressed his stance firmly. It's nothing. You said you wanted to talk to me about something. What is it? Qi Shuowen asked kindly. Seeing how haggard he was, Tang Zheng could not bear to disturb him. Qi Shuowen seemed to have guessed his thoughts. Why are you being so formal with me? Just tell me what you want. Tang Zheng did not beat around the bush. He went straight to the point. Professor Qi, I'm in the middle of a scholarship selection. However, some people are using my absence as an excuse to stir up trouble. So, I'd like to ask for your help. You're absent. Didn't you ask for a leave of absence from the university? Moreover, as far as I know, you were the top scorer in last semester's final exam. It's perfectly justifiable for you to be awarded the scholarship. Chi Shoan was puzzled. Someone is targeting me. You want me to solve this problem for you? Tang Zheng nodded. Chi Shoan did not agree immediately. Instead, he looked conflicted. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I'll solve this problem for you." Seeing his resolute and conflicted look, Tang Zheng was puzzled. This should be a trivial matter for Professor Qi. Why did he look like he had made up his mind? There must be something fishy going on. However, Professor Qi was secretive and unwilling to talk about it. Tang Zheng was at his wits' end. After bidding farewell to Professor Qi, Tang Zheng could not stop thinking about Professor Qi's haggard look. He could not bear to see him like this. No, Professor Qi has taken such good care of me. He must be in trouble now. I can't just sit by and do nothing. I have to figure out what's going on. Tang Zheng suddenly remembered Professor Qi's best friend, Old Wei, the owner of the Imperial Treasure House. He must know what happened to Professor Qi. He drove to the entrance of the Imperial Treasure House. There were still many precious antiques in the Imperial Treasure House and business was booming. Old Wei was excited to see Tang Zheng. Back then, Tang Zheng had resolved the Millennium Blood Jade issue for him. He had always wanted to thank Tang Zheng but never had the chance. Old Wei greeted him warmly. He smiled like a flower and said, "What a rare guess. I was wondering why I heard magpies chirping so early in the morning. It turns out that young Master Tang is here. Your presence brings light to the Imperial Treasure House." Seeing the owner of the Imperial Treasure House so enthusiastic, the other guests looked at Tang Zheng curiously, wondering who this young Master Tang was. "Old Wei, can I have a word with you?" "Okay, let's go to the office." Old Wei was slightly surprised when he saw Tang Zheng's serious expression. He stopped smiling. "Young Master Tang, what can I do for you?" In the office, Old Wei poured Tang Zheng a cup of tea and asked in a deep voice. "Old Wei, I saw Professor Qi today and found that he was much more haggard. You are Professor Qi's close friend. I want to know if he encountered any difficulties." Tang Zheng asked directly. Old Wei's expression changed slightly when he heard this. "You don't know his situation? What's the situation?" Tang Zheng was confused. Old Wei looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. After confirming that he was not lying, he sighed and said, "It's a long story. Actually, this matter is related to you." "Related to me? Do you still remember the archaeology in the 100,000 Mountains last year?" Tang Zheng nodded. Outsiders did not know the details of the archaeology because the officials had issued a gag order to the people involved. After that, Professor Qi talked about it with a lot of sighs. He even suspected that he was being monitored. Monitored? Tang Zheng shivered. He remembered the person outside Professor Qi's office. Could it be that Professor Qi was not being paranoid but was really being monitored? That person was monitoring Professor Qi. Tang Zheng was furious. The matter of the 100,000 Mountains had already passed, but the officials still sent people to monitor Professor Qi. This was too much. Although I don't know what exactly happened in the 100,000 Mountains, Old Qi mentioned a few things when he was drunk. His unfair treatment was the aftermath of that incident, and he mentioned a name called Lu Ming. I heard that this person has a lot of background, and he caused a lot of trouble. Old Wei said. Lu Ming, are you saying that Professor Qi was tricked by Lu Ming? Of course, Tang Zheng would not forget this clown. Lu Ming was the leader of the archaeological team, and because of various things, he had an intense conflict with Tang Zheng. In the end, because he led the military to encircle and annihilate the witch clan, both of his arms were crippled by Tang Zheng. However, in the end, he saved his dog life, but who would have thought that he would come out to stir up trouble again? I should have broken his neck instead of his arms. Tang Zheng gnashed his teeth in hatred. Old Wei nodded. Yes, Professor Qi's scientific research projects have all been cancelled. He has no funds, and he only has a few nominal titles in the Archaeology Association. Now, People in the archaeology world are keeping a respectful distance from him, afraid that they will be implicated if they get involved with him. Tang Zheng was shocked. Professor Qi was a titan in the archaeology world. In the past, many people wanted to know him, but now he had become a jinx. It could be said that he had fallen from heaven to hell. No wonder he was so haggard. Chapter 610. Tang Zheng finally understood why Professor Qi had hesitated for a moment before agreeing. With his current status, it would not be easy for him to help Tang Zheng. He knew it would be difficult, but he still agreed to help me. I, Tang Zheng, will never forget this kindness, he thought to himself. After understanding the whole story, Tang Zheng began to worry about Professor Qi. He had forced Professor Qi into a difficult situation. He had to withdraw this request to save Professor Qi a headache. He had just arrived at the university office when he saw two people arguing from afar. One of them was red-faced. Who else could it be but Professor Qi? The other was Yang Liang. Yang Liang was full of himself and did not take Professor Qi seriously at all. In the past, Yang Liang would never have dared to treat Professor Qi like this. He must have seen Professor Qi lose his power, so he was acting like this. Tang Zheng was furious. He strode over and happened to hear Yang Liang's sarcastic remarks. Do you really think you're the great Professor Qi of the past? You want to stand up for Tang Zheng? Ch, look in the mirror. Yang Liang was secretly pleased. He would never have dared to treat Qi Shuowen like this in the past. This time, Qi Shuowen had taken the initiative to walk right into his mouth. Of course, he would not let go of this great opportunity to taunt him. Qi Shuowen was extremely embarrassed. He said bitterly, Yang Liang, so you're this kind of person. I was blinded by your pretense in the past. I'm fighting for Tang Zheng's rights. You're a real villain for retaliating. Haha, I'm a villain? But I'm living a good life, unlike you who's like a jinx. Everyone avoids you. You've gone too far. Qi Shuowen was shaking with anger. I'm going to talk to the dean. I don't believe there's no room for reason in this world. Yang Liang blocked the door with his body and said disdainfully, the dean is a busy man. He doesn't have time to deal with your trivial matters. Besides, I'll be honest with you. The dean asked me to stop you from coming. The dean doesn't want to see you at all. Qi Shuowen's aura faltered when he heard that. He had really become a jinx. His old acquaintances were all avoiding him. However, when he thought of Tang Zheng's trust in him, he was unwilling to leave just like that. He had promised Tang Zheng that he would do it. Yang Liang was enjoying Qi Shuowen's ugliness with satisfaction when he suddenly saw a figure dashing toward him. He thought that it was an impudent student and was about to reprimand him when he realized that it was a leg that was charging at him. Bang! With a muffled sound, this leg ruthlessly kicked his chest. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew out in a sorry state and crashed into the door. Like a dead pig, he softly fell to the ground. Qi Shuowen was shocked by the sudden attack. He was dumbfounded. It took him a while to realize that the attacker was Tang Zheng, who was standing in front of him with a scowl on his face. Tang Zheng. Why are you here? Qi Shuowen greeted him awkwardly. Tang Zheng said bitterly, Professor Qi, why didn't you tell me about the unfair treatment you've been receiving? Why did you have to bear it all in silence? All of this happened because of me. It's my duty and responsibility to resolve it for you. Qi Shuowen said sheepishly, how did you know? Old man Wei told me everything. Besides, Yang Liang's behavior just now also explained everything. Professor Qi, why did you have to hide it from me? It's just a small matter. You have so many things to do every day. There's no need for me to add to your troubles. Tang Zheng shook his head and held Professor Qi's shoulder. Professor Qi, as long as I, Tang Zheng, am around, I will never allow these clowns to bully you. I'll teach him a lesson for you and avenge you. Tang Zheng clenched his fists so tightly that they cracked. Yang Liang, who looked like a dead pig, immediately scrambled to his feet and said in horror, Don't, Tang Zheng. Don't hit me again. Although he hated Tang Zheng to the core, he did not dare to be presumptuous in front of Tang Zheng. Even though he had just taken a kick from Tang Zheng, He did not dare to show any hostility. This was because the memory of how Tang Zheng had severely injured the president of the Martial Arts Association, Yu Zhangkue, right in front of him had left a deep impression on him. Tang Zheng would not listen to his pleas for mercy. He stepped closer and closer. Yang Liang retreated step by step until he finally reached the corner of the wall. There was nowhere else to go, but he still tried his best to move backward as if he wanted to melt into the wall. Seeing Tang Zheng raise his fist, Yang Liang immediately squealed like a pig being slaughtered. It was as if he was about to meet the king of hell. Tang Zheng, stop. Professor Qi could not wait to stop him. Don't hit him. Otherwise, people will talk about you. Besides, it's not worth it to dirty your hands over someone like him. Tang Zheng was already facing the problem of being selected for a scholarship. If there was another incident of him violently beating up a teacher, he might even be expelled from the school, let alone a scholarship. Qi Shouen would not watch Tang Zheng ruin his bright future without doing anything. At the last moment, Tang Zheng stopped. His fist hovered above Yang Liang's head. The wind that it created blew his hair into a mess. Even his mouth was crooked. You're lucky. Professor Qi is a magnanimous man. He won't stoop to the level of a clown like you. Tang Zheng spat on the ground and said. Yang Liang hurriedly bowed to Qi Shouen. His head was almost touching the ground. He said gratefully, "Thank you, Professor Yang. You're a magnanimous man. Get lost." Tang Zheng said in disgust. Yang Liang immediately ran away, pissing his pants. He could not care less about the onlookers who were pointing and gossiping about him. This time, he was utterly humiliated. Professor Qi, let's go. These are all powerful people. Why should we beg them? Tang Zheng said as he helped Qi Shouen up. Qi Shouen sighed deeply and said, Tang Zheng, it's all because of me. I've caused you trouble again. Tang Zheng waved his hand and said, this started because of me. I'm the one who caused you trouble. Qi Shouen shook his head helplessly and said, then what about your scholarship? Tang Zheng was not sure. However, he did not want Professor Qi to worry. He smiled freely and said, it's okay. It's just a scholarship. I don't need that money. Qi Shouen sighed dejectedly and said, but it's an honor. Haha, Professor Qi, do you think someone like me would care about this honor? Tang Zheng retorted. Qi Shouen was slightly stunned. He finally remembered Tang Zheng's identity and felt a little relieved. The two of them walked out of the campus together. Tang Zheng asked, Professor Qi, what is Lu Ming doing now? What right does he have to interfere with your work? He's young. Of course he doesn't have that kind of power. However, he has a powerful father. He's just a dog who bullies others. Qi Shouen said disdainfully. He obviously looked down on Lu Ming as well. So he's relying on his father. I think he's cheating his father. Who's his father? Tang Zheng said angrily. A deputy minister in charge of archaeology. Hey, Tang Zheng, why are you asking these questions? Don't do anything stupid. Qi Shouen warned him warily. He was gradually getting to know Tang Zheng's way of doing things. Sometimes, he just liked to use violence. For a scholar like Qi Shouen, this kind of behavior was unacceptable. Tang Zheng smiled and said, of course I'm not going to do anything stupid. Doesn't he like to rely on his father? Then I'll let him know what it means to cheat his father. I don't need to use my fists to deal with him. Qi Shouen was skeptical when he saw how confident he was. He was about to persuade him again when his phone rang. When he picked up the phone, his expression became strange. When he finally hung up the phone, he could not hide the astonishment on his face. What happened, Professor Qi? Who called? The principal of Yenqing University. The principal? Tang Zheng searched deep in his memory and recalled the hale and hearty figure at the freshman's opening ceremony. The principal of Yenqing University was a famous scholar and educator. He was very famous. The principal said that the university has a welcoming event for me. Tang Zheng was delighted. Since the principal had taken the initiative to contact him, it would definitely bring more benefits to Professor Qi. It would improve his status in the university. That's a good thing. Qi Shouen was non-committal. He said, "The headmaster said that the school will be welcoming a very important foreign guest. This foreign guest is very interested in the history and culture of the Huaxiao Empire and antiques. The school is going to cater to his interests, so I'm part of the reception team." "Which foreign guest is so important?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. Yanqing University was the most prestigious university in Huaxia. It had always been an important target for all kinds of visitors. It had hosted many celebrities and politicians and was very experienced. Qi Shuowen shook his head. In order to ensure the safety of the foreign guest, the principal said that it's not appropriate to announce his identity to the public. He just asked me to report to the welcoming team as soon as possible. Then Professor Qi, you should go now. Tang Zheng, I'll warn you again. Don't do anything stupid. Otherwise, it'll be too late for regrets. Qi Shuowen said seriously. Tang Zheng waved his hand and told him not to worry. He strode out of the university. In the capital city, there was a low courtyard that was hidden in a low and old residential area. It was not very visible. When Tang Zheng stood in front of the gate of the courtyard, he felt very different from ordinary people. Although it was not visible to the naked eye, Tang Zheng could clearly feel that many pairs of eyes were locked on him in the dark. There were even sniper rifles aimed at him. But he was carefree and did not take them seriously at all. He swaggered toward the gate. "Hello, this is private property. We don't accept guests," the guard at the gate said in an old-fashioned manner. Tang Zheng smiled and went straight to the point. "I'm looking for Xu Yingtian." The guard shivered slightly, and his expression immediately raised a level of vigilance. He asked, "Who are you?" "I'm a special agent," Tang Zheng said calmly. This was a title that Xu Yingtian had promised him. It was a protective talisman for him. In the past, Xu Yingtian had invited him to visit the headquarters of the National Security Bureau many times. But he never had the time. This time, he just happened to be here. Since he had promised Xu Yingtian to join the National Security Bureau as a special agent, of course, he should do something occasionally. Chapter 611. Tang Zheng did not wait for too long at the door since the guard immediately reported when he heard the words special mobilization. It was just that a pair of eyes rolled around Tang Zheng's body. The special mobilization of the National Security Bureau wasn't something that an ordinary person could handle since it required the other party to be extremely powerful. But no matter how the guard looked at it, he did not feel that the young man before him possessed such strength. A short while later, Xu Yingtian walked out and laughed at Tang Zheng. "You're a rare guest." Tang Zheng bashfully smiled and said, "You have invited me so many times, so I should at least come and recognize you." "Yes, you're a special mobilization, and this is your home. So of course, you should come and visit." Hearing these words, the guard felt a chill in his heart. This young man was truly a special mobilization, and even the bureau chief was personally welcoming him. So this young man was definitely not an ordinary person. As Xu Yingtian led the way, Tang Zheng looked around and praised with a smile, "Your place is like an iron bastion." "I'm sorry." Xu Yingtian knew that he couldn't hide his arrangements from Tang Zheng, so he humbly replied. The short building in the courtyard was extremely old and emitted an aura of vicissitudes. The National Security Bureau was established in this courtyard in the past. Back then, this place was also considered luxurious, but it has lost its splendor and looks a little shabby. Xu Yingtian explained. Tang Zheng nodded his head. The National Security Bureau had a long history, and this ancient courtyard served as a foil to its background. It was not something that the Dragon Group could compare to. Xu Yingtian's office was located on the top floor, so there was no overlooking view. But when he stood at the window and looked out, he would see rows upon rows of tall buildings. You wouldn't visit a temple without a reason. You're not here to simply visit, right? Xu Yingtian smiled with his eyes narrowed. Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "I can't hide anything from you. But before we talk about this, I want to know what happened to the Emperor's younger brother that you captured." "He, even if you didn't tell me, I was going to tell you. Thanks to your help in the Northeast operation, we successfully captured this important person. You played a big part in it. When the higher-ups heard about this, they especially praised you. Tang Zheng shook his head. He didn't care about praise. Of course, he also understood that the leader who praised him must be someone at the top of Hua Xia's hierarchy. If an ordinary person were to receive such an honor, they would definitely be incomparably excited, thinking that there was smoke rising from their ancestors' graves. However, Tang Zheng was so calm and collected that Xu Yingtian had a whole new level of respect for him. He felt that it was a wise decision to recruit him. The emperor's younger brother is called Hirohito. The members of the royal family of the island nation don't have surnames, only names. Hirohito is the name of the captive. The other party is a ninja with a firm will. We are still interrogating him, so we are bound to obtain some useful information. However, the news of Hirohito's capture has already been sent back to the island nation. Presumably, the island nation will soon take action. Humph, if I knew that he would be so stubborn, I would have cut him off with a knife. Tang Zheng didn't care about the identity of the other party and said with a murderous look. Xu Yingtian helplessly shook his head and patted Tang Zheng's shoulder and advised, "Don't be impatient. We will always find a way to pry open his mouth." But since the news of his capture has already been sent back to the island nation, the other party will definitely do their best to obtain his freedom. Tang Zheng said worriedly, "Don't worry, Hirohito has already been hidden by us in a secret base. It won't be easy for the island nation to rescue him. Moreover, the island nation won't dare to use diplomatic means to force the release of the captive because that will be a great humiliation. The captive of the royal family will also cause chaos in the island nation and make the people question the authority of the royal family." "Oh, then it seems that we have a lot of time left." Tang Zheng temporarily put him back into his stomach. Because, if Hirohito was released so easily, then Tang Zheng definitely wouldn't be happy. "Tell me what you came here for," Xu Yingtian asked. "Help me investigate a person." Tang Zheng immediately said the name of Lu Ming's father. Xu Yingtian's expression didn't change. He didn't feel the slightest bit of surprise or fear because he had to investigate a deputy minister with real power. Xu Yingtian looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes and asked, "Did he provoke you?" "His son Lu Ming and I have a grudge." Xu Yingtian understood and said after a while, "This deputy minister Lu is not an honest official. We have a lot of evidence on him, but the higher-ups don't want to touch him. Since Lu Ming has provoked you, then we can do something." Although this deputy minister had a high position, in Xu Yingtian's eyes, he didn't have much weight. His value couldn't be compared to Tang Zheng's. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and directly stood on Tang Zheng's side. He didn't even ask Lu Ming what happened between Tang Zheng and Lu Ming. "Thank you. Haha, no need to be polite. You are a member of the National Security Bureau. Dealing with you is going against the National Security Bureau. Of course, I will support you." Xu Yingtian laughed heartily. "This is only a small matter. Even if you didn't come looking for me, I would have gone looking for you. That's because I have a more important task for you." Xu Yingtian's smile vanished as he spoke in a serious tone. When Tang Zheng first agreed to join the National Security Bureau, he understood that he would receive some tasks, so he didn't have any resistance. Moreover, Xu Yingtian so readily agreed to Lu Ming's matter. Politeness demands politeness. Of course, he wouldn't refuse Xu Yingtian's task. What task? A diplomatic security task. Tang Zheng furrowed his eyebrows. "Haha, this is a good task. The person you are protecting is a world-famous beauty. How many people want this task but don't have the chance?" The more Tang Zheng listened, the more confused he became. He really didn't know who he was supposed to protect. Actually, this protection task fell on your head for a reason. Moreover, you will only protect in secret, so there won't be too much exposure. You should be very consistent with your principles. Xu Yingtian continued. This beauty's visit to Hua Xia has a stop at Yenqing University. Not only will she visit the campus, but she will also hold a public speech. There are many dangerous factors. In addition to the security personnel in the open, I am going to let you mix in with the students to protect in secret. Combining the light and the dark, this will ensure that nothing goes wrong. Who is the other party? Why are you mobilizing so many people? Tang Zheng finally couldn't help but ask curiously. Her Royal Highness Princess and of the Swedish royal family. Ah, it's her. Tang Zheng was shocked. This was an old acquaintance. He had too much contact with her in the South Sea. Moreover, he saved her life from the Sea King. Hey, you've heard of her too? I knew it. This princess and is very famous, especially in the Western countries. She is almost a household name. She is the dream lover of many men. Since you know her, you should know that this security task is indeed a good one. Tang Zheng's expression changed. He hesitated for a while and said, "Can I not accept this task?" He was not afraid that he would not be able to protect her, but he was worried that Princess Anne would recognize him. If that happened, it would be terrible. Too many things had happened in the South Sea. Princess Anne had always regarded him as a god. Tang Zheng did not take it seriously at all. After all, the two of them were people from two different worlds. But he never thought that such a coincidence would happen and the two of them would meet again. This time, he was in a dilemma. Xu Yingtian looked at him suspiciously and asked, "This is a good job, and there is not much danger. Why did you refuse this?" Tang Zheng was speechless. "This task, you have the right time, place, and people. Can you just treat it as helping me once?" Xu Yingtian persuaded. Since he had already said this much and Xu Yingtian did not hesitate in the slightest to agree to his request, if Tang Zheng were to refuse, then he really would not be loyal. "Well, I'll accept this task." Tang Zheng had no choice but to compromise. But he had made up his mind. He must avoid Princess Anne and not be discovered by her. This way, there would not be any trouble. 3 days later, Princess Anne's private plane will arrive in Beijing. After attending the corresponding official event, she will arrive at Yenching University the next day for a series of interviews. So, there is not much time left for you to prepare, but I believe that you will be able to complete the task perfectly. Xu Yingtian was very confident in Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng bitterly smiled in his heart as he accepted the mission. 3 days passed quickly. During this period, the officials officially announced Princess Anne's visit to Huaxia. Suddenly, almost the entire world's media focused on Huaxia, the ancient country. Many people were speculating why Princess Anne would choose to visit Huaxia at this time. After all, ever since the kidnapping in the South China Sea, Princess Anne had been living in seclusion. The media rarely had any new news about her. This was her first official appearance on the international stage after the kidnapping incident. It had extraordinary significance. She chose Huaxia as the first stop of her visit. Many people would subconsciously speculate about the deeper meaning behind it. After all, Huaxia's rise in recent years was too dazzling. This time, Anne's visit increased Huaxia's exposure and invisibly raised Huaxia's international status. But no one would have thought of Huaxia. The reason why Princess Anne chose Huaxia was extremely simple. It had nothing to do with the so-called influence of the country. It was only related to one person. The mysterious immortal who saved her life in the South China Sea. Anne looked at the land gradually coming into view outside the porthole. A ripple appeared in her eyes. She muttered to herself, "The ancient country of Huaxia, the most mysterious country in the world. I must find you, the immortal." Bruce looked at her Royal Highness worriedly. His 2 eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Since the kidnapping incident, Bruce could often hear her Royal Highness whispering softly. Every time, it would be without fail that young immortal. Chapter 612. As the butler of the Swedish royal family, Brosnan had watched Princess Anne grow up and knew her very well. Looking at her expression, Brosnan knew that Princess Anne was in danger. He thought bitterly in his heart, that young immortal is really too hateful. He almost stole the soul of the princess. However, there was another person who didn't have any hostility towards that mysterious immortal. He sat beside Princess Anne and didn't move at all, just like a statue. This person was one of the people who had gone through hardships with Beza on the island. He had already resigned from the United Nations peacekeeping force and was now Princess Anne's bodyguard. The special plane drew a beautiful arc and landed at Beijing International Airport. The official reception staff of Huashia, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately went up and held a simple welcome ceremony. The princess and her entourage were then escorted to the 5-star hotel where they were staying. Along the way, Princess Anne looked out of the car window with interest, admiring the beautiful ancient country of Huashia. In fact, she had a faint expectation in her heart. Would the immortal know that she had come? And that she had come especially for him? The immortal knows everything. He will definitely know that I have come. She said to herself silently, then will he come to see me? Her heart sank, and she was a little uncertain. All along, she had boasted that she could subdue anyone with her charm, especially men. But only when she faced the immortal did she realize that her charm was ineffective. She shook her head slightly, indicating that she shouldn't let her imagination run wild. Tang Jing sneezed fiercely a few times. He thought to himself, who is thinking so much about me? He has already sneezed a few times. These few days, Yenqing University was almost boiling. Everyone was rushing to spread the news that Princess Anne would be visiting Yenqing University and would interact with the students present during her speech. Although Princess Anne was a foreign guest, she was extremely popular among the trendy students of Yenqing University. This was not only because of her identity as a member of the royal family, but also because of what she had done over the years. Although she had a prominent status, she had always been concerned about the hardships of the people at the bottom of society. She had donated to the poverty-stricken areas, and when there was a major outbreak of the plague 2 years ago, she had personally volunteered to serve the patients in the epidemic area. Such a princess would of course receive countless honors and support, and her reputation was well-deserved. Tang Zheng was silently praying that Princess Anne's trip to Yenqing University would be smooth. That way, he wouldn't have to show himself and wouldn't be discovered by the princess. However, the other 3 people in the dormitory seemed to have taken stimulants. Even Zhu Yang, who was usually the most stable, was abnormal. He was paying attention to the princess's movements at all times. Ever since it was reported that Her Royal Highness had successfully arrived in Huashia's capital yesterday, the 3 of them were so excited that they almost couldn't sleep. The 3 of them had already tried their best to get a few tickets to the lecture, preparing to see the charming appearance of Her Royal Highness when the time came. For this reason, the 3 of them were constantly trying on clothes, preparing to find the clothes that they were most satisfied with, so as to give the princess a good impression. In fact, maybe the princess wouldn't even notice them, but they still enjoyed it. Tang Jing helplessly rolled his eyes. Was there a need to be so exaggerated? Especially Sinosaurus, you're a cultivator, can't you be a little more stable? Look at your excited face and neck, aren't you afraid that your girlfriend will be jealous? Tang Jing faintly sighed, thinking that there was an insurmountable generation gap between him and his roommates on this matter. Laro-san, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and change into a good set of clothes. When the time comes, if you have the chance to take a photo with Her Royal Highness, that would be a great fortune. Sinosaurus excitedly urged. My clothes are quite suitable. Tang Jing lightly said. How can that be? You have to change into something more handsome. There's really no need. Aren't you in a hurry? If you delay any longer, it won't be good if you're late. Tang Jing deliberately advised. The few of them looked at the time and shouted that it was almost too late. They had no choice but to let go of Tang Jing and rushed to the school auditorium as fast as lightning. Outside the auditorium, there was a sea of people. 3 inside and 3 outside were all students who heard the news. The police had already set up a cordon to guide the students into the auditorium. Wow, luckily Laro-san reminded us. Otherwise, if we came a little later, it would be difficult to go in. Sinosaurus sighed with emotion. The others nodded in agreement, hurriedly lined up, and finally handed over their admission tickets. After passing through the security gate, they followed the crowd into the auditorium. Today, the security of the auditorium was clearly raised by several levels. The school's security could only be responsible for order in the periphery, while the core area was filled with real police. Not only that, Tang Jing also found a lot of plainclothes in the crowd. The smell of iron and blood on their bodies could not escape Tang Jing's senses. After sitting down in his seat, Tang Jing calmly looked around. This was the center of the auditorium, about 10 meters away from the stage. He could clearly see everything on the stage. Suddenly, the crowd at the entrance was in an uproar and burst into cheers. Wang Shiji immediately looked up and said with incomparable excitement, "His Royal Highness the Princess is here. Wow, I can finally see His Royal Highness the Princess's elegant demeanor." Zhu Yang also said with excitement, "Hey, why are you here?" Suddenly, another person's voice called out in surprise not far away. It turned out to be the 4 people from Yi Dingdang's dormitory. Yi Dingdang was among them, looking at Tang Zheng with burning eyes. "You actually came here behind our backs. Do you want to see His Royal Highness the Princess's beautiful face? Humph, you boys are all bad people. You actually came here quietly. If we didn't catch you red-handed, I'm afraid you wouldn't tell us about this." The sour ridicule made the boys embarrassed, especially Sinosaurus, who hurriedly said with a smile, "Misunderstanding, this is all a misunderstanding. We only came here to join in on the fun. We didn't plan to hide anything from you." The girls coldly snorted, clearly not believing this nonsense. At this time, a dazzling figure walked into the auditorium, attracting everyone's attention. The girls' attention was also completely attracted, so they had no time to teach the boys a lesson. Princess Anne, the real person, is even more beautiful than the photo, and has more temperament. Wow, is this the style of the royal family? It's too special, too cool. The crowd immediately exploded like a pot, discussing spiritedly. And always had a faint smile on her face, like a warm spring breeze, making people feel relaxed and happy, as if they were about to get lost in this smile. It could be said that out of the thousands of people present, only Tang Zheng's state of mind was the calmest. He only glanced in the direction of Princess Anne, and then saw a few familiar faces. Other than the princess, Beza and Bruce are also here. Tang Zheng thought in surprise. Since that's the case, then I should secretly hide so that they won't find any clues. All third, are you stunned? Isn't His Royal Highness the Princess very beautiful? It's simply shocking. Sinosaurus urged. Tang Zheng shook his head and smiled bitterly. I'm not looking at her face. Back then, Tang Zheng had been with Princess Anne for a few days and had long since memorized her image in his mind, so how could he be surprised? What are you looking at if not her appearance? All 3, why are you so strange today? Zhu Yang could not help but ask curiously. Tang Zheng smiled embarrassedly and said, "Don't worry about me. Hurry up and admire His Royal Highness the Princess." The others nodded happily. Only Yi Dingdang walked over with a complicated expression and said, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Tang Zheng spread out his hands and said, "Don't listen to their nonsense. I came here for a serious matter." "What serious matter?" Yi Dingdang asked suspiciously. Tang Zheng smiled, but still kept it a secret. He had no choice but to say perfunctorily, "You'll know when the time comes." Yi Dingdang bit her lips and gave up on continuing to ask. She looked at Princess Anne from afar and said, "The various great families also have a very high opinion of Princess Anne. Although she is not from Huaxia, she has many fans in the upper class. Oh, it seems that she is indeed very popular." Tang Zheng looked at the increasingly beautiful and delicate face from afar and sighed. Yi Dingdang nodded in agreement. The commotion in the crowd gradually subsided. Everyone just looked at Her Royal Highness from afar and up close. Her Royal Highness took her seat in the center of the stage. Bruce and Beza stood respectfully at the side. Beza kept his eyes and ears open, constantly paying attention to the movements in all directions to ensure Her Royal Highness's safety. The school leaders and relevant personnel had already taken their seats. Tang Zheng saw Qi Shaowen's figure in the crowd. So the foreign guest that the school asked him to receive was Princess Anne. If Professor Qi shines in the reception this time, he will definitely be able to get out of his current predicament. Tang Zheng suddenly realized. However, Tang Zheng could not interfere in this kind of thing. He could only silently pray that everything would go smoothly. Later on during the visit, if Qi Shaowen's explanation could enlighten Princess Anne, then it would be a great achievement. The school leader went on stage to give a speech, briefly introducing Princess Anne's life and giving her high recognition and praise. The students listened attentively. Many of them were impressed by Princess Annie's deeds. Their gazes towards her became more and more passionate and full of admiration. Tang Zheng was not in the mood to listen to the long speech. His attention was focused on the crowd and the surrounding environment. Fortunately, he had not found any signs of danger so far. Next, let's welcome Her Royal Highness, Princess Anne, to give a speech. The school leader's long speech finally came to an end and announced with a sonorous voice. Immediately, the crowd gathered their attention. Many people who were hunched over immediately puffed out their chests and watched Her Royal Highness walk to the center of the stage in high spirits. Her speech was not in English. Instead, it was in Hua Xia language. Her pronunciation was perfect, and many people were stunned. Her Hua Xia language was amazing. It was amazing. Princess Anne's speech was neither long nor short. It mainly explained her own journey, some of her experiences in poor countries, and the meaning of charity. Finally, she urged everyone to maintain a kind heart in their hearts at all times and be willing to help others. Only such a life could be described as wonderful and even perfect. When she finished her last sentence, the crowd immediately erupted into loud cheers. It was as if the roof was about to be lifted off. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's expression changed drastically. His hair stood on end. He felt as if he had been electrocuted and his whole body trembled. Chapter 6:13. This sharp sound was the whistling sound of the bullet rubbing against the air. Assassination. These two words immediately appeared in Tang Zheng's mind. The others did not notice at all. Even the police and plainclothes were calm, unaware that danger was approaching. At the critical moment, it was too late to remind them. Tang Zheng directly bounced up from his seat, like a rock spreading its wings, sweeping over the heads of the crowd and pouncing on Princess and on the stage. Suddenly, he replaced Princess and as the focus of the crowd. Especially the nerves of the police were immediately triggered and they all pulled out their guns. However, Tang Zheng's speed was much faster than theirs. He left an afterimage in the air and landed in front of Princess Anne. Beza had been standing near Princess Anne. His reaction was extremely fast and he directly punched the uninvited guest. Bang! Tang Zheng did not have time to resist and took the punch. However, he did not retreat an inch and completely blocked his body in front of Princess Anne. Swish! The sword flew and a black light seemed to split open space. Ding Dang screamed and sparks flew. The bullet hit War Soul and lost its offensive power. The scene of the bullet hitting War Soul immediately fell into the eyes of many people. Beza was one of them. He immediately realized that a gunman was shooting at the princess and shouted, "Assassin!" Then, he also used his body like a wall in front of the princess, cutting off the chance for the gunman to continue shooting. Beza suddenly turned his head and looked at Tang Zheng. His violent punch did not have the slightest reaction. It was as if he had hit a ball of cotton. It was inconceivable to him. In addition, he also understood that the other party was not an enemy, but a helper. He must be a security guard arranged by Hua Xia. Because, if the other party really wanted to assassinate the princess, the sword just now could have directly killed the princess on the spot. But when he saw the appearance of the uninvited guest, he was immediately shocked. His mouth was wide open as if a duck egg could be stuffed in. "How could it be you?" he blurted out. Wasn't this the immortal that Her Royal Highness could not forget? Beza had experienced many big scenes in this half of his life. He was an expert who had walked through a rain of bullets. But that time in the South Sea, he truly experienced what a true powerhouse was. The impression that young man gave him was too deep, and it would linger for the rest of his life. Sometimes, he even wondered if the other party was really human. Could it really be the legendary immortal? Otherwise, how could he have such heaven-defying abilities? But he never thought that he would meet this immortal again, and under such circumstances. It was really amazing. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. In the end, he had been recognized. He nodded to Beza and said, "Protect the princess." Then, he stepped aside and slightly opened up the distance between him and the princess. His eyes were like a scanner as he searched through the crowd. At this time, the The police rushed over and pointed their black muzzles at Tang Zheng, as if they would pull the trigger at any time. The students seemed to have woken up from a dream as they screamed. Assassination. Someone actually tried to assassinate the princess. Shua. The school leaders' faces and vests were immediately covered in cold sweat. Their faces were extremely pale. One must know that for this speech, they had prepared for a long time. They strictly controlled the people who entered the auditorium and conducted background checks on the ticket holders. If there was anything suspicious, they would definitely not let them enter. But even so, this kind of thing still happened. The school could not absolve themselves of the blame. If Princess Anne was assassinated at Yenqing University, it would be an extremely bad diplomatic incident. Not only would the school leaders be in big trouble, but many people in the government would also be implicated and lose their jobs. Put down your weapons and raise your hand. The police shouted at Tang Zheng. They were all furious and filled with killing intent. Tang Zheng's image at this moment was really too much like an assassin. He held a long sword and was filled with killing intent. If it was a stranger, they would also think that he was a huge threat. Yang Liang and Chen Hao thought so too. After the two of them were suddenly stunned, they looked at each other and saw the ecstasy in each other's eyes. Tang Zheng's reckless actions meant that they did not need to do anything. He would be in serious trouble. Forget about the scholarship, he might not even be able to keep his life. But the people in Dorm 502 and Yi Dingdang did not think so. They were really shocked by Tang Zheng's actions. What was going on? Seeing so many guns pointed at Tang Zheng, Yi Dingdang felt like a knife was being twisted in her heart. She immediately stood up and tried to get close to Tang Zheng to help him. But Tang Zheng's movements were faster than her. He jumped from the stage and rushed towards one of the people in the crowd. "Don't shoot!" Beza shouted at the police who were ready to make a move. "Don't hurt him." In fact, he felt that his warning was unnecessary. Although the police had the advantage in numbers, they might not be able to hurt him. The police were suddenly stunned. They looked at each other and did not know what to do. Wasn't this person an assassin? Why didn't the princess's guards allow everyone to hurt him? The police were confused. Tang Zheng was not confused at all because he finally locked onto the assassin. The other party had a young face. His expression was no different from the others. But Tang Zheng still locked onto the other party with a glance. He directly rushed towards the other party and without hesitation, War Soul greeted the other party's head. The assassin finally moved. A pistol with a silencer was aimed at Tang Zheng. He quickly pulled the trigger. Bullets whistled out of the barrel and shot towards Tang Zheng's chest. Tang Zheng's body was in midair, but he did not retreat. War Soul was held horizontally in front of his chest. The blade flashed with a black light and directly split the bullets into two. Fast, ruthless, accurate. All of these were vividly displayed. Seeing that his attack did not succeed, the assassin fled towards the door. Want to escape? No way. Whoosh. Tang Zheng chased after him as fast as lightning. Just as he was about to reach the other party's back, suddenly, without any warning, two long swords attacked Tang Zheng from both sides. All of this happened too suddenly. No one expected it, not even Tang Zheng. But he had been through hundreds of battles. His body coordination and sharpness could be said to be perfect. He slightly leaned to the side, allowing the long sword on the left to slide past his chest without hurting him at all. On the other side, his War Soul was already ready to attack. It exploded with a bright light. The sword slashed at the other party's long sword. The sword did not dissipate. It drove straight through and directly pierced the other party's chest. Blood splattered. The other party did not even have time to scream before he became a corpse. Ah! Murder! The crowd immediately burst into deafening screams. The crowd rushed towards the door like a tide, blocking the gunman. Tang Zheng quickly pulled back the War Soul sword, and then looked at the assassin on the other side. This assassin was not very old, like the gunman. The three assassins all had Asian faces, and it was impossible to tell which country they were from. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed with a fierce light. He roared, "Get down!" Battle Soul ferociously attacked, one sword strike breaking through 10,000 catties. The air seemed to have solidified as the powerful sword force surged towards the assassin. The assassin's expression changed as he tried to escape, but how could Tang Zheng allow him to succeed? The War Soul Sword had completely locked onto the opponent in all directions, so no matter how he tried to escape, he would not be able to escape from the War Soul Sword's attack. With a sword cry, the assassin's escape came to an abrupt stop. War Soul had pierced through the other party's shoulder. However, War Soul's momentum did not decrease. It actually nailed his body to the floor. The hilt of the sword was still trembling. The other party lay on the ground, gasping for breath. "Catch him!" Tang Zheng shouted at the stunned police officer and rushed towards the door. There was a sea of people at the door. It was filled with countless students. The staff outside kept shouting for them to stop, but the students were so frightened that they simply ignored them. The crowd blocked the way, and the gunman had already disappeared into the crowd. "No, we have to catch him." The other party was a huge threat. Moreover, such a terrible thing had happened. If they could not catch him in one fell swoop, then the great country of Huaxia would lose too much face. Moreover, if they did not catch him, they would not be able to give Princess and a satisfactory explanation. Tang Zheng glanced at the door, took a deep breath, and flew towards the top of the crowd. He stepped on the wall and flew out of the auditorium. There was also a sea of people outside the auditorium. Among them were students who had just escaped. There were also people who heard the news and came to watch. It was so densely packed. Where could he find the gunman? Tang Zheng suddenly swept his gaze. The sea of people was so vast that it was not easy to find him. But this did not stop him. He stood condescendingly on the head of the large stone lion at the entrance of the auditorium. He looked into the distance and took in the entire crowd. He had undoubtedly become the focus of the crowd. They all looked at him with surprise, suspicion, or curiosity. Many people pointed at him, especially the students who had just escaped. They had complicated expressions and whispered in each other's ears about what had happened in the auditorium. Suddenly, the news of Princess Anne's assassination spread like wildfire. Especially when there were many news media gathered outside the auditorium, adding fuel to the fire. Many people wanted to find out what had happened in the auditorium. Who was this man standing on the stone lion's head? Click, click, click. The cameras of the media workers were all aimed at Tang Zheng. They pressed the shutter to capture this moment. At this moment, Tang Zheng did not have time to care about his identity being exposed. He finally found the whereabouts of the gunman in the crowd. This person retreated from the crowd without leaving a trace like a loach. However, he still did not escape Tang Zheng's sharp eyes. "Stop!" Tang Zheng roared and chased after him. The gunman saw that he had been discovered. He did not turn his head. He pointed his gun at the sky and pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot caused chaos. Screams rose one after another. The crowd directly blocked Tang Zheng and the gunman. How cunning! Tang Zheng jumped and used his classmate's shoulder as a stepping stone. He flew in the air and chased after the gunman. Chapter 614. Graceful as a swan. These 4 words seemed to be tailor-made for Tang Zheng at this moment. He flew over the shoulders of the students and headed straight for his target. He leaped like a rabbit and landed like a falcon, blocking the gunman's path. The gunman turned pale with fright and hurriedly aimed his gun at Tang Zheng, trying to shoot. But Tang Zheng's speed was faster than his finger could pull the trigger. Swoosh! The sword flashed, and without the slightest sound, the gunman's arm was separated from his body. Ah! Seeing the severed arm fall to the ground and blood splatter, the gunman screamed at the top of his lungs. Tang Zheng did not have the slightest bit of pity. He punched the gunman's temple, causing him to faint, and then dragged him like a dead dog to the auditorium. Along the way, the surrounding crowd retreated and made way for him. Everyone looked at him in shock and fear, pointing at him and whispering among themselves. "Brother Kung Fu, his brother Kung Fu." A surprised voice sounded. Clearly, someone had an amazing memory and remembered this brother Kung Fu who was in the limelight back then. Immediately, many people's memories were evoked, and they also recognized Tang Zheng. Back then, Many people had seen Tang Zheng's performance in the martial arts circle convention. It was also bloody and profiteering. Now, it seemed that after a few months, his style had not changed. It was just that this time, he had changed from the competition to the campus. At this time, the police also surrounded them, looking at Tang Zheng with complicated expressions. They had already determined that Tang Zheng was not here, but one of their own. Just now, the National Security Bureau had already informed the police that Tang Zheng was one of their people, and he was responsible for secretly protecting the princess. Most of the students in the auditorium also rushed out, and Yi Dingdang was one of them. Like a moth, she threw herself into Tang Zheng's arms. A beautiful woman and a handsome man, especially eye-catching. It was enough to make a big splash. The sound of the camera shutters did not stop. Yi Dingdang raised her head, not at all afraid of these cameras, as if to declare her sovereignty. Instead, she showed a sweet face to the camera. "You really scared me to death this time. You were too reckless," Yi Dingdang said with 30% complaint and 70% pride. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and patted her back, comforting her. "I'm fine. How can these shrimp soldiers and crab generals hurt me?" Yi Dingdang smiled sweetly. She was also confused because of her concern. Thinking back, with Tang Zheng's current cultivation, ordinary people really couldn't hurt him. Suddenly, the crowd quieted down, and all the cameras turned to face the entrance of the auditorium. Princess Anne walked out leisurely. Basil and Bruce stood by her side like her protectors. From front to back, it was as if a small hill was packed with police officers. It was an airtight protection. The police and the school were really racking their brains. They had strictly guarded against it, but this kind of vile assassination still happened. Fortunately, the princess was not seriously injured. However, Her Royal Highness was obviously not a person who would stay still. She had just encountered an assassination attempt, but was not afraid at all. Instead, she couldn't wait to walk out. This scared the others. They couldn't wait for Princess Anne to leave through the back door, to guard against a possible second assassination attempt. But who could stop the princess's actions? They could only watch as she walked out of the auditorium under everyone's watchful eyes. In public, she was a live target. If there was another assassination attempt, it would be even worse. Therefore, these people were all on high alert, guarding against any attacks to the death. Princess Anne did not have the slightest expression of fear. Instead, she looked excited, and her emotions surged. Many people had an illusion in their hearts. At this moment, Her Royal Highness was like a little girl in love. It was as if she had seen the person she liked. Didn't her crimson cheeks explain everything? Many people were suspicious. What was wrong with Her Royal Highness? Her Royal Highness led a large group of people and went straight to Tang Zheng. After seeing the two people hugging each other, she was slightly stunned. However, there was no hesitation in her feet. Instead, the excitement in her eyes became even stronger. There's a show. This thought immediately came to everyone's minds. All the cameras were directly aimed at Her Royal Highness, and the sound of shutters kept clicking. This scene was definitely never seen before. No one had ever seen such an expression on Her Royal Highness' face. There must be a story. Everyone immediately had a feeling of anticipation in their hearts. Princess Anne stared at the figure in a daze. That familiar face. This person had appeared many times in her dreams. However, this figure had always given her a very distant feeling. She could not touch it, let alone grasp it. However, at this moment, he actually appeared in front of her. It was so real, even more real than when they were in the South China Sea. Brosnan looked at the princess, then looked at Tang Zheng. He suddenly had a headache. His worries had come true. He was a little regretful. Why did he agree to Her Royal Highness' visit to China? He should have advised the king and queen. Perhaps he had thought that in this vast sea of people, there would not be such a coincidence to meet this person. Moreover, this person was like a god. He should not have appeared in such a bustling school in such a big city. It was said that the gods in Huaxia liked to live a hermit's life. Why would a god come to such a big city? Brosnan felt like crying but had no tears. However, He could only look at Her Royal Highness and hope that she would not do anything extreme. Her Royal Highness was already standing in front of Tang Zheng. Her Royal Highness, who had been talking and laughing, had changed. It was as if she had turned into a little girl. She was somewhat at a loss and looked at Tang Zheng nervously. This is too strange. Did the sun rise from the west? Everyone looked at each other. They did not know what was going on. Tang Zheng could only smile bitterly. His wish had come to nothing. It was all these damned assassins' fault. If they wanted to assassinate someone, they should not have chosen this time to get him involved. Yi Dingdang looked at the two of them suspiciously. With a girl's sixth sense, she immediately sensed that there was something fishy going on between the two of them. However, the key point was that one was a foreign princess and the other was a student. The difference between the two of them was like heaven and earth. How could they have crossed paths? Princess Anne looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Suddenly, she smiled. In an instant, it was as if the world had been robbed of its color by this smile. Only her smile was left. In the hearts of many people, only this smile was left. This smile was fixed in the minds of many people and became the most beautiful memory of their lives. What was a smile that could topple a city? This was it. As a woman, Yi Dingdang could not help but admit that the other party was very beautiful. Moreover, this kind of beauty was aristocratic, elegant, and unattainable. Many people would admit that Anne was very beautiful, but they would not have any improper thoughts because they understood the difference between them. Tang Zheng was immune to Princess Anne. Perhaps it was because the two of them had been together for too long, or perhaps it was because he had seen the sorry state of Princess Anne after she had been captured. In short, he calmly looked at Princess Anne. This calmness was particularly deep and unfathomable. It was completely different from others. Princess Anne's eyes lit up and her heart began to beat rapidly. Ever since she was young, other people would be very cautious when facing Princess Anne. Especially after she became an adult, no matter how gentlemanly a man was, they would all be courteous to her, giving people the feeling that they were deliberately trying to curry favor with her. However, only Tang Zheng was the most special. When he faced her, he did not have any messy thoughts. He did not have any thoughts of class. Instead, he treated her as an equal. This was a feeling that Princess Anne had never experienced before. It was especially attractive. Just like at this moment, he was the most special person in the crowd. I'm so happy to see you again. I can't describe how I feel right now. Princess Anne took the initiative to speak. Her voice was not loud, but it was accurately transmitted to many people's ears. The other students immediately looked at each other in disbelief. Many people's hearts were filled with disbelief. Damn, did they hear it wrong? Brother Kung Fu actually knew Princess Anne, and it seemed that their relationship was not shallow. Princess Anne's girlish appearance clearly meant that there was a lot going on between the two of them. However, the school had another thought. The assassination happened in Yenqing University, so the school could not absolve themselves from the blame. The school leaders were distressed over this matter. Many people's hearts were bleeding, thinking that they would not be able to keep their positions. However, at this moment, a mysterious person appeared, and according to the introduction, this person was a student of the school. This brother Kung Fu not only saved the princess, but was also an old acquaintance of hers. This is too good. A turnaround. This was definitely a huge turnaround. Many people realized this point. They originally thought that they were standing on the edge of a cliff, but now they realized that there was still a chance for survival. Many people's eyes immediately became fiery when they looked at Tang Zheng. Yang Liang and Chen Hao were mixed in the crowd. They also heard the princess's words. Just now, they thought that Tang Zheng was going to be in big trouble, or even lose his life. Now it seemed that it was all wishful thinking on their part. Especially when he saw the school leader's expressions, Yang Liang immediately realized that his little tricks were simply laughable. With a relationship with the princess, no matter what kind of scholarship it would be easy for him to get it. He deliberately made things difficult for him, he was simply seeking his own death. In an instant, Yang Liang's face was ashen, his legs were weak, and he sat on the ground. Tang Zheng nodded at Princess Anne and said against his will, "I'm also very happy to see you. She was a princess, and in front of so many people, he had to give her some face. He could not just say that he did not want to see her. He was afraid that if he did that, he would be torn apart by the crowd. When the princess heard this, she beamed with joy and said, "I chose to come to Huashia because I wanted to see you, and I have a feeling that I will definitely see you. My intuition did not lie to me. I just arrived yesterday, and I already see you today. Moreover, you saved me again. This is like a special arrangement by God. Every time I am in danger, you will appear from the sky. There is an old saying in Huashia, a hero saves a beauty. You are my hero, don't you think so? The princess's hero. Wow." Chapter 6:15. Tang Zheng was rendered speechless by the princess's words. Especially when he noticed the crazed expressions on everyone's faces, he wished he could immediately disappear from everyone's line of sight. Yi Dingdang's eyes turned as she stared at Princess and with caution and asked, "How do you know each other?" Princess and finally turned her attention to Yi Dingdang. Even as a beauty, she had to admit that Yi Dingdang was a great beauty with a unique charm. "This is a secret between us." Princess and winked and said with a bit of playfulness. Yi Dingdang's eyes immediately widened. There was actually a secret. This was a blatant provocation. Yi Dingdang wasn't a normal girl. Facing the princess, she wouldn't retreat half a step. Instead, she held Tang Zheng's arm even tighter, afraid that he would fly away if she let go. Even if you didn't say it, Tang Zheng would tell me," Yi Dingdang said with a snort. Princess Anne's eyes lit up as she said in pleasant surprise, "Yi, so you really are called Tang Zheng." At first, after she was rescued, she wondered if this was a fake name. She didn't expect that the other party didn't lie to her and told her his real name. Tang Zheng speechlessly rolled his eyes. When he first met her, he didn't think that she would be a princess. Otherwise, he would have definitely used a fake name to fool her. "Tang Zheng, this time my biggest gain from coming to Huashia is to see you again. Now that I've caught you, you can't run away," Princess Anne said excitedly as she subconsciously reached out to grab Tang Zheng's hand. Shua. Everyone's eyes were like spotlights as they immediately focused on Tang Zheng. Many people were indignant. What did this brat do to deserve the princess's favor? Moreover, he actually held her hand. Skin to skin, this was something that many people didn't even dare to dream of, but this brat did it so easily, and he didn't feel flattered at all. Tang Zheng's expression was calm, but his heart couldn't help but tremble. Princess Anne's skin was extremely good, smooth and tender to the touch. He smiled bitterly and said, "Of course I won't run. Your Highness, it's not safe here. Let's leave first." He had already noticed that the others' eyes were about to spit fire, so he felt that it was better not to provoke them. Princess Anne smiled sweetly and said, "Just call me Anne. Princess sounds so distant. As for safety, with you around, I am the safest. No matter who the enemy is, you can protect me." These words gave him a sense of accomplishment. However, the others were about to go crazy. Why was the princess so dead set on this brat? Immediately, all the school leaders looked at Tang Zheng with burning gazes, deeply imprinting Tang Zheng's face in their minds. If they missed out on this kind of student, then it would be a huge waste. The principal saw the opportunity and immediately stood up and praised, "Your Highness, Student Tang Zheng is our Yenqing University's outstanding student. This is recognized by everyone. With him here, he can protect your Highness." The principal had already seen Tang Zheng's strength, so his words were not exaggerated. However, Tang Zheng couldn't help but roll his eyes. When did he become recognized by everyone as an outstanding student? He almost couldn't get a scholarship. Princess Anne was even more happy when she heard this. She firmly said, "I already knew that he was a dragon among men. For your Yenqing University to have such a student, it is your great honor." Princess Anne was serious, but her words stunned everyone. "Damn, are you kidding me? Yenqing University is a famous school with 100 years of history. How famous is that? How can they say that it is their honor to have a student like Tang Zheng? Is the order reversed?" However, the other party was Princess Anne. Her words carried enormous weight, so no one dared to refute her. The school leaders bitterly smiled in their hearts and nodded, "Your Highness' words are like gold and jade." "You are right. Is this official recognition?" Many people felt dizzy. However, Princess Anne thought that this was a matter of course. After all, Tang Zheng was a legendary immortal. Of course the secular school would be proud of him. Princess Anne didn't need to waste her brain cells to understand this simple logic. When Bruce saw this, he couldn't help but interrupt. He was really worried that Princess Anne would do something extreme. If that happened, it would make things worse. "Your Highness, let's leave first." The princess purposely shook her head and said, "Why leave? Don't we have follow-up activities planned? After such a thing happened, we should leave temporarily to avoid other dangers," Bruce earnestly advised. Princess Anne made up her mind and said, "As long as he is here, no one can hurt me." TSK. Many people felt sour in their hearts. This trust was really unparalleled. How could this kid be so lucky? Bruce still wanted to persuade her, but Princess Anne didn't give him the chance. She directly asked the principal, "I hope that he can accompany me for the following activities. Is that okay?" Of course, the principal wouldn't foolishly refuse. He hurriedly nodded and said, "Of course." Princess Anne smiled and said, "Then I will have to trouble you, my knight." Knight. When these two words came out, many people immediately remembered that Princess Anne was saved by a mysterious knight after the kidnapping incident. Could it be that the mysterious knight was this kung fu bro in front of them? Everyone immediately remembered what the princess said just now. This was the second time he saved her. This meant that he had saved her once before. Wasn't it that kidnapping incident? Wow. The crowd was in an uproar. This discovery was too shocking. One had to know that there were too many speculations about this mysterious knight internationally, especially the media of various countries, which had offered a huge reward for clues about the mysterious knight, but in the end, it was all to no avail. No one would have thought that the mysterious knight was actually from Huaxia. Moreover, he was a university student. This was inconceivable. All the media personnel were excited. This was the right time to come. They actually obtained such a big piece of news. Tang Zheng didn't understand what these two words meant. This was because he didn't pay much attention to Princess Anne. He also didn't know about the mysterious knight. "Student Tang Zheng, the princess's safety is in your hands," the principal said seriously. Tang Zheng couldn't refuse. He bitterly nodded and said, "Okay." Princess Anne's next itinerary was to visit Yenqing University's School History Museum. Yenqing University had a long history. The school's School History Museum was equivalent to the modern history of Huaxia. It was very interesting. Of course, the school's School History Museum was not inferior. It was a symbol of the school's accumulation. The collection was richer than many provincial museums. This was also the reason why they needed Qi Shoroan. When it came to antiques, no one was more knowledgeable and experienced than him. The group marched towards their destination. Not only were there more security guards, but there were also more onlookers. It was very lively. As for the assassins, they had already been taken away by the police. They had already begun the intensive interrogation. They were determined to give the princess an explanation. Along the way, the princess and Tang Zheng walked side by side. Although they were no longer holding hands, even a blind person could see that they were very close. Yi Dingdang was forced to be pushed to the side. Everyone wanted to be closer to the princess. Of course, these advantageous positions were occupied by the government officials. Princess Annie and Tang Zheng had undoubtedly become the focus of the crowd, especially Tang Zheng, whose limelight had even faintly overshadowed the princess. This was because everyone was simply too curious about him, and couldn't wait to scan him thoroughly like a scanner. Princess Anne wore a faint smile on her face. She was absent-minded as she listened to the principal's introduction of the school. Most of her attention was on Tang Zheng. She was surprised to find that in real life, he was not as decisive as he was in the South China Sea. Instead, he was quiet, just like the other students. The more Tang Zheng behaved like this, the more mysterious and unpredictable she found him to be. After a cursory tour of the school's school history museum, the group went to the museum. The museum's collection was dazzling and full of historical charm. The principal introduced with a smile, "Our school's museum has a rich collection. Chi Shoroan will do the introduction." Chi Shoroan took a step forward and nodded slightly at Princess Anne. Tang Zheng interjected, "Professor Chi is a leading figure in the field of archaeology in Huaxia. He is also my most respected teacher." Princess Anne's eyes lit up. The polite smile on her face immediately turned into a warm one. She said enthusiastically, "Professor Chi, we'll have to trouble you from now on." Her attitude was obviously much better than that of the school's leaders. Of course, this was all thanks to Tang Zheng. A single sentence from him could make Princess Anne change so much. Once again, everyone had a deep understanding of Tang Zheng's position in Princess Anne's heart. Professor Chi looked at Tang Zheng gratefully. After this incident, the school would definitely treat Professor Chi better. Professor Chi immediately went into work mode and led the group to explore the various collections. Professor Chi was very knowledgeable. Not only did he know each collection like the back of his hand, he was also very familiar with the history behind the collection. The tour was not boring at all. Instead, everyone was subconsciously immersed in Professor Chi's explanation. The principal was deep in thought. He had already made a decision. After this incident, he would immediately resume Professor Chi's work. Although there were people from the top who were deliberately making things difficult for Professor Chi, after the principal discovered the close relationship between Professor Chi and Tang Zheng, he had to reconsider Professor Chi's importance. This was because if Tang Zheng spoke ill of Yenqing University in front of the princess, he would be in serious trouble. Moreover, her school had such a powerful person like Tang Zheng, so if she didn't do her best to win him over and instead pushed him to the opposite side, only a fool would do such a thing. After the tour, the principal politely invited Princess Anne to a specially prepared dinner. Unexpectedly, Princess Anne rolled her eyes and looked at Tang Zheng thoughtfully. She said, "Mr. Principal, I won't be able to attend the dinner because Tang Zheng and I have a lot of things to do." Immediately, everyone looked at Tang Zheng with mixed feelings. What did this kid do? He was like a concubine in ancient times who was loved by all. Chapter 6:16. Since the princess had spoken, no one dared to disobey. They quietly left the campus, even refusing the police protection. However, before leaving, the principal repeatedly reminded Tang Zheng to protect the princess and not let anything happen to her. Of course, they couldn't go hungry during dinner time, and they couldn't just eat at a roadside stall. As the host, Tang Zheng had to find a restaurant. Of course, a normal restaurant wasn't suitable for the princess. Tang Zheng thought for a moment, and found a good place to go. Li Hongqing's private restaurant. Fortunately, he had Li Hongqing's contact information. He simply said that he wanted to treat a friend to dinner, and Li Hongqing promised to prepare immediately. They took a low-key car and drove out of the campus. Beza was driving, and Bruce was sitting in the passenger seat, looking at the rearview mirror from time to time. He was going to refute the princess's suggestion, but seeing the stubbornness in the princess's eyes, he knew that his suggestion wouldn't work this time, so he had to give up. In the rearview mirror, Tang Zheng was sitting in the middle, and Princess Anne and Yi Dingdang were on his left and right. Princess Anne was very well-mannered and wouldn't do something rash like chasing Yi Dingdang away. However, she focused all her attention and willpower on Tang Zheng, and rarely paid any attention to Yi Dingdang. Princess Anne kept talking to Tang Zheng, telling him all kinds of things after the kidnapping incident, and curiously asking about Tang Zheng, like a curious baby. Yi Dingdang bit her lips, feeling like a fly was buzzing in her ears, but she couldn't do anything. However, she was particularly interested in the kidnapping incident, because she had never heard Tang Zheng mention it before, so she pricked up her ears, afraid that she would miss out on any important information. Outside the private restaurant, Li Hongqing was personally waiting at the entrance, which made the guests and waiters click their tongues in wonder. They were guessing who was so important to her. The car stopped steadily at the entrance. Bruce quickly got out of the car and opened the door for Princess Annie. Princess Annie smiled faintly and walked out. "Sure. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on her. They thought that this foreign girl was so beautiful. Her figure, face, and temperament were all impeccable. Li Hongqing had seen countless people, but when she saw Princess Anne, she was also startled. She looked at her in shock and wondered who this person was. Who brought the guests here? He had never seen it before. Princess Anne was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, she politely waited for Tang Zheng to get out of the car. When she got out of the car, she naturally held onto his arm like a socialite attending a banquet. She stood tall like a proud swan. Sitting in the car, Yi Dingdang gritted her teeth as she watched this scene. She roared in her heart, "Tang Zheng is my boyfriend. I should be holding on to him. When is it your turn?" However, she knew that making a scene at this time would only make Tang Zheng lose face. She would never be that kind of stupid woman. Therefore, she took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. She got out of the car and glared at Princess Anne. However, she did not expect the other party to ignore her. When Li Hongqing saw Tang Zheng, she quickly walked up to him. Although there was still suspicion in her eyes, she did not point it out. She knew the relationship between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. Back then, Yi Dingdang risked her life to save Tang Zheng. That scene was still imprinted in her mind. Therefore, she liked Yi Dingdang very much. Although she did not know why Tang Zheng was so intimate with a foreign beauty, she did not directly ask. "Young Master Tang, long time no see. If you didn't come, I would have thought that you had forgotten about this small place of mine," Li Hongqing said with a smile. "How could that be? Am I not here now?" Tang Zheng replied. "Who is this beautiful lady?" Li Hongqing asked. Her eyes inadvertently swept over Bruce and Beza. In particular, Bruce's temperament made her secretly speechless. Because she was no stranger to this temperament. There were too many rich people in the capital. Some of them specially went to Europe to hire experienced butlers. This way, they could be distinguished from the nouveau riche and appear to have style. Li Hongqing had seen a few experienced butlers like this. Their temperament was similar to Bruce's, but far inferior. Only by looking at Bruce did she know what was called a professional. What was a noble's butler? It was completely different from those who were trained in batches. Li Hongqing could not help but look up and down at Princess Anne. She wondered what kind of illustrious identity she had to have such a personal butler accompanying her. "Let's go in and introduce." In order not to expose Princess Anne's identity in public, Tang Zheng deliberately lowered his voice and said. Li Hongqing understood and nodded. She directly led the four people to a luxurious private room that had already been prepared. Princess Anne inadvertently glanced at the scenery along the way and nodded. "This restaurant is really unique. It's very interesting." Tang Zheng chuckled and said, "Boss Li, it's not easy to accept such an evaluation from her. If other people knew about it, they would definitely be jealous of you." Li Hongqing had already guessed that the other's identity was not ordinary. She took advantage of the situation and said, "Hehe, then I'll introduce this young lady. Young Master Tang, it's time to introduce her. Don't you think she looks familiar?" Tang Zheng asked. After his reminder, Li Hongqing looked at Anne again. Sure enough, she was somewhat familiar. She doubtfully asked, "She really does look familiar. But I can be sure that I have never seen this young lady before." Li Hongqing opened a business. Her ability to recognize people was not bad. As long as she had seen someone once, she would have some impression of them. Princess Anne saw the conversation between Tang Zheng and Li Hongqing. She knew that they had a good relationship. She took the initiative to smile and stretched out her hand. "Hello, my name is Anne." "Anne." Li Hongqing held her hand. She was still a little confused. This name was also somewhat familiar. She seemed to have heard it somewhere before. Suddenly, her heart seemed to have been struck by lightning. Her heart trembled as she exclaimed, "You are Her Highness Princess Anne?" In the past few days, there had been a lot of news about Princess Anne in the upper circle of the capital. Ever since she announced that she was visiting China, there were many people in the upper circle of the capital who were active in their thoughts. If they could see Princess Anne and admire her appearance, it would definitely be a great honor. In the future, if word got out, they would definitely be envious. But no one had any way. After all, and was an official visitor. How could she casually accept someone's invitation? Li Hongqing did not pay too much attention to this matter, so she did not recognize her for a moment. But at this moment, a stormy sea was set off in her heart. She looked at Princess and in disbelief. Even though she was experienced and knowledgeable, she was still at a loss from this sudden attack. Princess Anne was already used to other people's reactions. She was used to it and said, "Right now, I am not a princess. Instead, I am Tang Zheng's friend. Thank you for your hospitality." Li Hongqing was flattered. Although she was curious as to why Tang Zheng would have a relationship with Princess Anne, she did not make a fool of herself. She immediately returned to normal and said, "Your Highness has graced my humble dwelling with your presence. Young Master Tang, many thanks for bringing this glory to my store. We are all friends." Li Hongqing quickly excused herself and went to the kitchen to quickly serve the dishes. She also took out her specialty and brought out all the signature dishes. The group of people ate to their heart's content. Princess Anne liked Hua Xia's food very much. Yi Dingdang turned her grief and anger into appetite. As if the food was Princess Anne, she swallowed it bite by bite. Good times are always short. Brosnan had already reminded them several times that they had to go back to the hotel. Princess Anne took the initiative to invite Tang Zheng to the hotel to sit down and chat. Suddenly, Yi Dingdang's eyes were almost spitting fire, and Brosnan's eyes were also quite unfriendly. If the media really photographed Princess Anne taking Tang Zheng back to the hotel for the night, even if they did nothing, it would still cause a huge storm. As a butler, he absolutely could not allow this to happen. Tang Zheng did not want to be the target of their anger, so he refused, which made Her Royal Highness feel quite regretful. They agreed that when the event was over in a few days, she must find him. After sending Her Royal Highness away, Tang Zheng breathed a sigh of relief. Everything that happened today was really unexpected, and it still made him a little dizzy. Very reluctant, right? A resentful voice floated into his ears. Tang Zheng was startled. He fell into a jar of vinegar. He quickly denied it and said, "How can that be? I can't wait for her to leave." These were the words from the bottom of his heart. He didn't want to have too much interaction with Princess Anne, and he didn't even think that he would have any interaction with her. All of this was a freak combination of factors, and it was not his fault at all. "Humph, you don't mean what you say." Yi Dingdang coldly snorted, "She is Her Royal Highness, and she is so close to you. Which man wouldn't be overjoyed?" Tang Zheng immediately put on a straight face and said seriously, "Those are all vulgar men. How can you put me in their ranks? Humph, I think you are not much different from them. Besides, your romantic affairs are not just a little bit." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and was speechless. The words of a person with a criminal record really had no credibility. "You have nothing to say, right? Tell me honestly, what is going on between you and her? How do you know each other?" Yi Dingdang quickly grabbed Tang Zheng's waist and asked in an unfriendly tone. Tang Zheng did not intend to hide anything, so he told her about the South Sea. Yi Dingdang stared with wide eyes and listened attentively. After a long time, she asked doubtfully, "You are saying that you really don't have that kind of feeling for her?" Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Do you want me to have some kind of feeling for her?" "No." "Humph, if you dare to have any kind of feeling for her, I will kill you." After saying this, she subconsciously reached down to grab him. Hiss. Tang Zheng trembled and sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked down and saw that his lower body was tightly grabbed by a pair of small white hands. Boom. Chapter 617. Ouch. Tang Zheng bitterly sucked in a breath of cold air and called out. Yi Dingdang jerked her hand back as if she had been electrocuted. Her face was as red as a ripe apple. She wanted nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. Of course, she knew what she had just grabbed. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. He was also a little overwhelmed by this turn of events. But when he saw her bashful expression, he couldn't help but laugh mischievously. "Ding Dang, I didn't realize that you were a female hooligan. Yi Dingdang anxiously glared at him. She angrily stomped her foot and retorted, "You're the hooligan. If you didn't deliberately piss me off, would I do that? I think you've been harboring ill intentions towards me for a long time. That's why you took the opportunity to do this, right?" Tang Zheng said with a mischievous smile. "No. No." Yi Dingdang hurriedly denied it. She shook her head like a rattledrum. Seeing her like this, Tang Zheng couldn't help but laugh out loud. So she had this side of her too. "Don't laugh. You're still laughing." Yi Dingdang was both embarrassed and angry. She directly waved her fist at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He immediately caught her fist and pulled her into Tang Zheng's embrace. She fiercely struggled, but Tang Zheng's strength was too great. His large hand pressed down, restraining her. "Hey!" It was soft to the touch. Tang Zheng shook his head and looked down. To his surprise, he found that his demonic claws had inadvertently pressed against Yi Dingdang's chest. This position was too intimate. Yi Dingdang also felt that something was amiss. She stopped resisting. Her face was so red that it looked like it could drip water. Her eyes were watery and filled with lust. Back then, the two of them had shared a bed and had intimate contact. But as time passed, this intimate action still caused ripples in their hearts. Yi Dingdang felt as if there was a little deer running around in her heart. She almost didn't dare to look at Tang Zheng. She was usually swift and decisive, but at this moment, she still showed the common traits of a girl. Looking at her shy appearance, Tang Zheng could not help but feel his heart itch unbearably, and the movements of his hands involuntarily became bigger. Yi Dingdang let out a long nasal sound from her throat. Her entire body went soft as she cried out, "Don't." However, the voice of rejection did not have any effect. Instead, it seemed like it was rejecting him, and it ignited the fire in Tang Zheng's heart. Tang Zheng was familiar with the process, and his big hand went in. It was already spring, and Yi Dingdang was well versed in martial arts. Her thin clothes made it convenient for Tang Zheng. Yi Dingdang's delicate body suddenly trembled. Her entire body was stretched taut, and she could no longer speak. All that was left was the sound of heavy breathing. How could Tang Zheng stop? He was immersed in his excitement as he attacked the city with ease. Beep beep. Suddenly, a car horn sounded, giving the two of them a fright. Tang Zheng quickly withdrew his hand from her chest. Yi Dingdang was shocked. She resisted the urge to fall to the ground and quickly covered her chest with her hands. Actually, she was not exposed. It was just that the feeling just now made her feel as if she was floating. There was a strong desire deep in her heart that was calling out to her. A car sped past them. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that they were outside and not at home. He bitterly smiled. Yi Dingdang took a deep breath and came back to her senses. She quickly jumped to the side and angrily glared at Tang Zheng. She stammered, You're too bad. Hihi, I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. Tang Zheng said with a mischievous smile. Hooligan, scoundrel. Yi Dingdang coquettishly said. This is a hooligan. I haven't even started yet. Tang Zheng said in a threatening tone. Yi Dingdang's face became even redder as she said, You're not allowed to come over. I'm going home. He hurriedly stopped a taxi that was driving over, got into the car with a whoosh, and drove away. Hey! Tang Zheng was stunned in the night wind. He did not expect the situation to take a turn for the worse so quickly. He sniffed his own hand. There was a faint fragrance of a young girl, intoxicating him. Sigh, this time she escaped. Tang Zheng said with regret. A man who only thinks with his lower body. A voice floated over. Tang Zheng frowned and said, Could it be that you were watching? Of course, this person was the lingering Marshal. Only a ghost would want to watch. Marshal said snappily. Is that so? Why do I feel a sour taste of jealousy? Tang Zheng deliberately teased. Marshal coldly snorted and pretended not to hear, but his heart really did feel a trace of sourness. Your ability to entangle women is much stronger than your cultivation. Even the Swedish royal princess has something to do with you. After pausing for a moment, Marshal could not help but choke. Princess Anne's matter was indeed out of her expectations. She originally thought that she understood Tang Zheng well enough. After all, they had been together for so long. However, he could always give her a new surprise from time to time. It was impossible to guard against. Tang Zheng shrugged with a smile and said, "I didn't want to either. Didn't you see that I was neither cold nor hot to Anne? Don't think that I don't know about the trick of wanting to capture the old crowd." Want to capture the old crowd? Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and was too lazy to deny it. He asked, "Those assassins today, did you see where they came from?" The fight with the assassin was very short. Furthermore, the assassin was taken away by the police, so he did not have the chance to interrogate him. Marshall's expression turned cold. He shook his head and said solemnly, "I can't tell. The other party deliberately concealed their origins." "Is that so? Then we'll have to see if there are any clues from the police's interrogation." Tang Zheng dialed Xu Yingtian's number. The impact of this assassination was extremely bad. Although Princess Anne did not say anything, the authorities would definitely be under a lot of pressure. If it was not handled well, it would cause a diplomatic dispute. Xu Yingtian's tone was obviously tired as he sighed with emotion. "Brother, it's a good thing that I set up 2 moves in the light and in the dark. With an expert like you secretly protecting me, otherwise, there would really be a big mess this time." Actually, he had only thought of it on the spur of the moment. After all, the authorities had already carried out this kind of security mission many times before. However, he never thought that there would be an accident and a horse would stumble. This time, there would be a problem. When he first found out about the assassination, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. He was secretly glad that Tang Zheng was at the scene. "It's just a coincidence." Tang Zheng did not take credit for himself as he calmly said, "He, you've only joined the National Security Agency for a short period of time. This time, you've made a new contribution. In the future, perhaps I'll have to abdicate my position as the bureau chief." Xu Yingtian laughed. "Have you found out the identity of the assassin?" Tang Zheng did not reply. The other party's mouth is quite hard. However, in the end, we managed to pry it open. The assassination this time is an old acquaintance. Guess who it is? Xu Yingtian's tone became somewhat cold. It was obvious that his heart was burning with rage. Tang Zheng's heart slightly moved. Who could an old acquaintance be? Island nation? Suddenly, a light flashed through his mind as he blurted out. Right, other than them, who else would have such ambitions? Xu Yingtian hatefully said, "They know that we have captured the royal family's Hirohito. This is revenge. They are attempting to sow discord between our country and the Western countries by assassinating Princess Anne. Although Princess Anne is a Swedish royal princess, she has a great reputation in the Western countries. If she is assassinated in Huaxia, many of our strategies and interests in the Western countries will be affected." As expected, it's a wolf's ambition. Tang Zheng heard this and flew into a rage. The other party's sinister intentions were really hard to guard against. "We'll inform the Swedish government. Of course, we can't be the scapegoat. All of this was started by them. Let them lift a rock and smash it on their own feet." Xu Yingtian coldly said. Tang Zheng guessed that it must involve a series of actions at the national level. He was very smart and did not ask any more questions. "Tang Zheng, you and Princess Anne actually have an unspeakable relationship. Hehe, you really hid it well." Xu Yingtian teased again. This information was not even known by the National Security Bureau. It was indeed out of his expectations. He could not imagine how Tang Zheng would be related to Princess Anne. Since it was already made public, Tang Zheng might as well not hide it anymore. Moreover, the more he hid it, the more the National Security Bureau would want to investigate. The nature of the National Security Bureau determined its behavior and standards. You should be familiar with the Dragon Group's scheme on the plane last year, right? I've heard a little about it. The Dragon Group's style of doing things is too unrestrained. At that time, the Dragon Group actually wanted to get rid of Tang Zheng in the air. It could be considered as crazy and unscrupulous. After I fell off the plane, I was saved by Princess Anne. At that time, she was sailing around the world. Later on, she was kidnapped by pirates. You should know about it. Oh, so that's how it is. Hee, a hero saving a beauty. So the mysterious knight that everyone is talking about is you. You don't know how many nobles in the Western world are jealous and hateful of you. You actually stole Princess Anne's heart, haha. Shu Yingtian's laughter made Tang Zheng embarrassed. He awkwardly coughed and said, "Don't laugh at me. She's a princess. Why would she like me? Don't follow the crowd." That's not necessarily true. If it was in the past, I would definitely not believe it. But from Princess Anne's performance today, hehe, I think it's most likely true. These years, the marriage partners of the royal family in the Western countries are not like before. It must be a noble of equal status. Many ordinary citizens have also entered the royal family. Moreover, in order to rope in the citizens, the royal family also tends to marry ordinary people. Stop. Seeing him talk non-stop, Tang Jing hurriedly interrupted, "I'm from Huaxia. I don't have anything to do with the Western countries. Don't count me in." That's not necessarily true. If you really succeed in your marriage with Princess Anne, it would definitely be a blessing for Huaxia. Seeing that he was endless, Tang Jing simply hung up the phone. Seeing Wu Zhuozhua staring at him, he speechlessly rolled his eyes. "Are you moved?" Marriage with the royal family, this is a good thing that many people dream of. Wu coldly asked. Tang Zheng stared at him and said in a bad mood, "Why are you blindly joining in? I'm going back to school." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,